Hello! If you're visiting for the first time, it's fantastic to have you here. And if you're a returning listener, welcome back. This video features mostly true scary stories with the sound of gentle rain in the background. If you're looking for something to help with sleeplessness, anxiety, or stress, you're in the right place. If you enjoy the stories, I'd be grateful if you'd subscribe. Thank you for being here. I have something special just for you today. As we dive into a tale of scary encounters at work, make sure to stick around because I'd love to hear where you're listening from in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to keep the chills coming. And before we jump in, I want to share a fantastic weight loss dietary supplement that works wonders while you sleep. Yes, you heard it right. No exercise needed. Click the link in the description below to learn more. Now, let's journey into my unsettling experiences at the office, where things are not all what they seem. I remember my first day at work. The building was old, with creaky floors and flickering lights. The moment I stepped inside, a chill ran down my spine. I thought it was just the air conditioning, but deep down I felt something wasn't right. The shadows in the corner seemed to sway, and I pushed the feeling aside, telling myself it was just my imagination. As the days went on, weird things began to happen. The lights would flicker more often than not. One evening, while working late, I noticed a shadow pass by the doorway. I looked up quickly. No one was there. I brushed it off and continued working, but my gut told me I should go home. Yet I stayed. I had deadlines to meet. Then one night the air felt heavy. I was alone in the office, and I began hearing whispers, soft and faint, like voices calling out to me. I jumped up, looking around. My heart raced, but again, there was nothing there. I tried to concentrate, telling myself I was just tired. With every tick of the clock, the whispers grew louder. It was like they wanted to tell me a secret, something important. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. On another night, I decided to leave early. As I packed my things, I saw a figure standing at the end of the hallway. It was just a silhouette, but it looked so real. My heart skipped a beat. I wanted to call out, but fear froze my voice. I blinked and it disappeared. I ran out, promising myself never to work late again. But the odd occurrences didn't stop there. I started hearing strange noises, furniture moving in empty rooms, faint knocking sounds, and even the feeling of cold breath brushing against my neck when I was all alone. I began to dread going to work. One day, I shared my experiences with my colleague, Alex. He laughed it off, saying old buildings always have their quirks. I wanted to believe him, but something deep inside me felt there was more to it. Weeks passed, and I began to notice things out of place. Files I had organized would be scattered across my desk, and my computer unexpectedly restarted. Frustrated, I pushed through, but the unsettling feeling lingered. One night, I decided to take a different route to the restroom, and I stumbled upon the basement door. It was slightly ajar, and curiosity took over. What could be down there? As I stepped inside, the air became thick, and a musty scent filled my nose. I could barely see anything. My phone light barely illuminated the stairway. I hesitated for a moment, but my feet moved on their own. Halfway down, I heard a loud creak, and I froze. I wanted to turn back, but something pulled me deeper. Suddenly, my phone flickered, showing a glimpse of a horrifying sight. A wall covered in photographs of previous employees. Their faces looked pale and twisted, as if they had seen something terrifying. Panicking, I rushed back upstairs. My heart was pounding, and I couldn't shake the feeling of dread. A few days later, I noticed Alex was acting strangely. He would jump at little noises, his eyes wide with fear. I was about to ask him if he was okay when he blurted out that he was hearing voices too. Was it just me, or was something really wrong with that place? As the days turned into weeks, we both decided to confront our boss about the strange events. After a long, awkward conversation, our boss finally admitted that the building had a history. People claimed to see apparitions and hear whispers at night. The reason? There had been some terrible accidents in the past. My skin crawled at the thought. Knowing the truth didn't make me feel better. It only deepened my fear. One evening, when we were closing up, the lights flickered violently, and we heard a loud bang coming from the supply room. Alex and I exchanged scared glances. We slowly approached the door, hearts racing. I pushed it open, and everything flew off the shelves. Boxes scattered everywhere. And in the middle of the chaos stood a mirror, shattered and reflecting distorted images of ourselves. "That wasn't here before," I whispered, and not tightening in my stomach. Suddenly, we heard a child's laughter echoing around us. It rang out, innocent yet sinister. I grabbed Alex's arm, pulling him back as the laughter grew louder, transforming into wails. We ran out of the room, slamming the door behind us. There was no way we were staying another minute. The next day, we found out that our co-worker Tara had seen the same things. She described a shadowy figure that would watch her from the corner of her desk. We decided to leave together that night, but as we were walking out, the front door slammed shut. Panic set in. We were trapped. I tried pushing the door, but it wouldn't budge. Then the whispers returned, swirling around us, amplifying our fear. We stumbled back, and suddenly, the lights went out. In the pitch darkness, we could hear our own breaths and the distant sound of muffled cries. I felt a tug on my sleeve, but when I turned, there was nothing there. We all huddled together, trying to find a way to escape. Just then, a soft voice broke through the darkness. "Don't leave me." We all jolted, hearts pounding. Who was it? Where's it coming from? It felt like we were stuck in a nightmare. We couldn't see anything, yet we could feel the presence growing closer. In our desperate attempt to escape, we searched for the nearest exit. Every door we tried was locked. It was like the building didn't want us to leave. The cold air wrapped around us, and the whispers turned into screams, echoing through the hallways as if the walls themselves were alive. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, we stumbled upon an emergency exit. We hurried outside, gasping for air, but as we turned to catch our breath, we saw the shadow that had haunted us. It stood at the entrance, watching with hollow eyes. I felt my stomach drop. This wasn't over. That night, I realized we couldn't just ignore it. I had to go back, not just for myself, but for my friends too. I spent the weekend gathering information and talking to former employees. They all had stories to tell, horrifying tales that made my knees weak. They warned me about the spirit of a worker who had never left. They said she lost her life tragically, trapped in that building for all eternity. The next Monday, armed with the knowledge of the building's dark history, I gathered Alex and Tara. Together, we decided to confront whatever was in that office. I brought an old flashlight and a camera, hoping to capture the truth. As we walked in, everything felt heavier. The shadows danced, and I could almost feel the spirit's energy around us. We made our way to the supply room, where everything had gone wrong before. I set up the camera and turned on the flashlight, illuminating the dusty shelves. "Is anyone here?" I asked, my voice trembling. Silence. I swallowed hard, fear clawing in my throat. I looked at Alex and Tara, and they nodded, encouraging me to continue. "Show yourself," I shouted, trying to sound brave, but inside I was quaking. Suddenly, the temperature dropped, and a chill crept up my spine. The whispers grew intense, swirling around us like a storm. The lights flickered, and the mirror slammed against the wall, cracking even further. Then, right in front of us, a figure began to materialize. It was a woman, her face barely visible through the shadows. She looked lost, her eyes filled with an endless sadness. "Help me," she whispered, and my heart shattered at the sound. I felt compelled to reach out. I had to help her find peace. "How can we help you?" I asked softly, hoping she could hear me through her despair. The shadows twitched, and for the first time, I felt empathy radiating from her presence. But she simply pointed to the mirror, her expression pleading. I took a deep breath and stepped closer. "What's in the mirror?" I murmured. The whispers intensified again, almost as if she was warning me. I turned my gaze to the cracked surface, and I swore I saw faces behind it. Faces of the lost, trapped just like her. Sudden fear gripped me. Could they be trapped forever? I glanced at Alex and Tara, their faces pale with fear. We had to break the mirror, but a part of me was terrified of what lay beyond. "Together, we can do this," I said, looking into my friends' eyes. They nodded, and with all our strength, We swung a heavy box at the mirror. Shards flew everywhere, and for an eerie moment, time stood still. The woman's face twisted in despair as the glass shattered. Then silence fell. Slowly, the shadows around us began to dissipate, the whispers fading into the air. A warmth enveloped us, and I felt relieved, as if a weight had been lifted. We had freed her spirit. With a deep sigh, I looked at Alex and Tara. "Did we do it?" I asked, hope shimmering in my chest. They smiled, but I knew it wasn't over. Even though we had faced our fears, something inside me still felt unnerved. Was she really gone? I glanced back toward the entrance as I heard footsteps. Were there more spirits waiting? That evening, as I lay in bed, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was still something in the building. Something dark and watching. What if the mirror had merely been a doorway, and we had only scratched the surface of its secrets? Maybe, just maybe, some stories are never truly finished. And perhaps the scariest encounters at work aren't just stories for Halloween. They are warnings of things best left undisturbed. As I drifted to sleep, a whisper filled the room, faint yet clear. "Don't come back alone." As night fell, I couldn't shake the eerie feeling from my recent encounter. Each creak of the floorboards made my heart race, and sleep evaded me. I kept imagining that shadowy figure standing by the doorway, lurking, waiting for me to let my guard down. I couldn't help but wonder if freeing that woman had done anything at all. The next morning, I arrived at the office feeling uneasy. The atmosphere was thick, almost stifling. I was still thinking about everything that had happened when I heard a soft, almost childlike giggle coming from somewhere down the hall. I froze, my heart pounding. Had I really heard that? I looked around, hoping to see Alex or Tara. They were late, and I felt alone. I loved that my office was usually bustling with noise, but today it felt abandoned. The laughter echoed again, and I followed the sound, moving slowly, my footsteps soft and careful. As I crept down the hallway, the laughter turned into whispers, calling to me. "Please," they seemed to say, "come play with us." I shook my head, trying to think clearly. I was not going to be drawn into this madness. I rounded a corner and entered the conference room. The long table was set up with chairs, all neatly pushed in. I scanned the room. Nothing seemed out of sorts, but the whispers grew louder. They circled me, wrapping around my head like a snake. My breath quickened. I told myself it was just the building settling, nothing more. Just then, I felt a sudden chill. The lights overhead flickered, casting long shadows over the room. The air felt electric, buzzing like something was about to happen. My instinct told me to leave, but I stood frozen. I caught a glimpse of movement out of the corner of my eye. A small figure stood at the far end of the room. It was a child. My heart sank. Why would a child be here alone? "Hello," I called out, trying to sound calm, but my voice wavered. The figure slowly turned its head, revealing a pale face with dark eyes that seemed too big for a child. It said nothing, just stared at me, mouth slightly open. Then, without a word, it pointed toward the wall. Confused and scared, I followed its gaze and gasped. Graffiti was scrawled across the wall, but it wasn't just any graffiti. It was a series of drawings depicting scenes of sadness. Kids trapped behind bars, tears running down their faces, and one image showed a figure hanging from the ceiling. My stomach twisted in knots. This wasn't right. I took a step back, taking in the full horror of what I was looking at. Suddenly, the child began to cry, a soft whimper that echoed through the room. I wanted to comfort it, but was also terrified. I stepped closer, my heart pounding in my chest. "What's wrong?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The child pointed again, this time at a small door hidden in the corner, covered in dust. It was so small, I hadn't noticed it before. Fear surged through me, but I knew I had to check it out. Maybe it was the answer to the mystery of this place. I took a deep breath, glancing at the child again, whose expression had changed to a look of despair. "Please," it whispered, the voice barely audible. "Help us." I hesitated for just a moment, then walked over to the door. My hand trembled as I reached out to grab the handle. It felt cold, almost unnaturally so. As I pulled the door open, a rush of air escaped, smelling musty and old. I peered into the darkness beyond. The small hallway beyond was narrow, with walls closing in on me. Dim light flickered from above, and I couldn't tell how far it went. I felt like I was entering another world. The child's cries seemed to follow me, echoing in the distance. I stepped inside, feeling an urge to find out what lay within. As I walked deeper into the corridor, I noticed the temperature dropped significantly. Goosebumps rose on my arms. The whispers intensified, now sounding like dozens of voices, murmuring secrets just out of reach. "Don't leave us! Don't leave us!" they chanted, sending shivers down my spine. Something brushed against my leg, and I jumped, spinning around, but found nothing there. My breath came faster. Nausea bubbled in my stomach as dread crept in. I pressed on, convinced I needed to see this through and help whatever spirits were trapped here. After what felt like forever, I reached a door at the end of the hallway. It was old and worn, begging to be opened. I paused for a moment, fear wrestling with my determination. Gathering courage, I knocked gently. There was no reply. Carefully, I turned the handle and stepped inside. Inside was a dimly lit room, filled with dust and remnants of whatever had been there before. Old toys scattered across the floor, broken dolls with glassy eyes. The very air crackled with lingering tension. In the center, a single chair stood, and on it sat that same child. But now it looked older, its expression sadder and more desperate. "Why did you come back?" it asked, voice trembling. "You weren't supposed to." I froze, fear washing over me. I wanted to help," I stammered, my heart racing. The child shook its head slowly. "When you came, you woke them up?" Behind the child, shadows lurked, shifting and swirling. I couldn't see their faces, but I felt their eyes watching me, hungry and angry. Panic gripped me. I turned to run, but the shadows sprang forth, surrounding me. "Stay with us," they chanted, a cacophony of voices swirling in my ears. "You cannot leave." My body froze in terror. I felt their cold fingers brush against my skin, pulling me deeper into the darkness. The weight of despair filled the room, and I screamed, hoping someone would hear me. But no one ever did. Struggling against their grasp, I grasped the door handle, yanking it hard, praying it would budge. At that moment, the child cried out, its voice breaking through the chaos. "Don't give in. You can leave." With a surge of strength, I broke free from their grip, bolting through the door and slamming it shut behind me. I stumbled back into the corridor, gasping for breath. The whispers had faded to a low murmur, but I could still feel their presence following me, gnawing at my back like a hungry beast. I raced down the hall, desperate to escape. Finally, I reached the main office again, my heart hammering in my chest. I glanced back towards the small door, certain the shadows would come bursting through. But nothing happened. Silence enveloped the room, and my heart settled, but the fear remained. The shadows might be waiting for another opportunity. Hastily, I gathered my things. I couldn't stay another minute. Just as I turned to leave, I noticed something on my desk, a small, tattered drawing, the same as the ones in the corridor. It depicted the child I had seen, standing behind black bars. It sent chills through my body. Worry flooded me. Had I really helped? Or had I set something loose? I backed away slowly, glancing around the room, feeling as if eyes were upon me. I made a vow I wouldn't return until I figured out what was happening, especially after what I had just experienced. That night, I did research on the office's history. I dug up old records, stories of kids who once roamed the halls years ago, children who had vanished without a trace. The more I uncovered, the more I felt a connection to their pain. They hadn't just been lost, they had been forgotten. Determined to make things right, I reached out to a local paranormal group. They specialized in helping trapped spirits, and I knew I needed their expertise. Days turned into a blur of conversations, plans, and worry as I filled them in on everything. Every detail of that horrifying place. Everything I had witnessed. Finally, we agreed on a night to perform a cleansing, hoping to release the spirits, allowing them to finally find peace. As the scheduled night arrived, a sense of dread filled me once again. I gathered my nerves as my new team walked into the office, armed with sage, candles, and tools to help connect with the spirits. It felt like I was marching into battle against a threatening unknown. We entered the office, and it felt different. The shadows danced as if aware of our intentions, the air thick with tension. We set up in the meeting room, creating a circle, the light from our candles flickering nervously. I could sense the fear in the air around us, a palpable reminder of what was at stake. As we began the cleansing ritual, I recounted everything I had seen and experienced. The flickering lights grew chaotic, and suddenly, the temperature dropped again. I shivered, glancing at my co-workers, who were equally on edge. The whispers started up once more, louder now, wrapping around us. "Leave," the voices hissed. "This is our home." This time, I refused to back down. Behind the shadows, I could feel the sorrow, the lost memories of the souls who had once walked those halls. "No, you deserve peace," I shouted, my voice shaking, but filled with determination. Our leader began to chant, the words flowing like a river. As they chanted, the shadows twisted and writhed, their forms becoming more chaotic, almost desperate. I held on to hope, urging the spirits to listen. With each word, the air grew charged, and the whispers morphed into a mix of cries and pleas, the pain pouring through the room like a swirling storm. "Help us, don't let us go." Then, in a final burst of energy, the room erupted with a deafening noise. The walls shook, candles flickered, and I felt a rush of air, as if something had been unleashed. I clung to the table, my heart racing. The shadows twisted and coiled, fighting against the light we were creating. My instinct screamed at me to run, but I stood my ground. A part of me felt responsible. Everything I had experienced led me to this moment. With one final chant, the energy surged to its peak, filling the room with a bright light. The shadows shrieked, their cries blending with the voices of children crying out for freedom. I held my breath, fear and hope battling inside me. I could see faces appearing in the light, some smiling, some sorrowful. I knew then that we were nearing the end of our fight. In that moment, a calm washed over me. I felt a presence behind me, a comforting warmth that felt like a hug. It brought me peace, and I knew the time for change was here. The shadows seemed to dissolve, their forms flickering as if they were being transformed into something beautiful. "Thank you," the whispers faded, melding into quietude as everything collapsed into silence. As the echoes of their cries vanished, I felt the air lighten. A warm glow enveloped the room, and I realized the shadows had been transformed into light. After what seemed an eternity, I opened my eyes. The room was still, the flickering lights now stable. My team stared at each other, wide-eyed and relieved. The air felt new, fresh, like a weight had been lifted. But I couldn't shake the feeling that we had only begun to scratch the surface. "How did that feel?" one of my team members asked, still looking shaken. I nodded, feeling an overwhelming sense of gratitude, knowing we had accomplished something significant. But we can't stop here. What if they come back? The unease crept back in, heavy on my heart. I knew we had freed some spirits, but the darkness lingered. Had all of the restless spirits been set free? Or had we merely stirred something deeper? The unsettling thought haunted me, whispering in my mind. I made a plan to keep in touch with the paranormal group and regularly check on the office, wanting to be prepared for anything the future might hold. The connection I felt with the spirits couldn't wane. As I drove home, I couldn't help but look back, glancing at the office building growing smaller in my rearview mirror. I had entered a world of shadows and whispers that had forever changed me, and I knew I couldn't walk away just yet. Deep down, I felt a bond with those lost souls, a promise I made to them to one day return. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. What awaited me the next time I stepped into that haunted place? The shadows no longer felt like mere specters. They were part of my story now. The thought lingered in the back of my mind, the whispers returning softly. "Don't forget to come back. We're still waiting. The days passed slowly, but the feeling in my gut never went away. I went on with my life, but thoughts of the office haunted me. Every creak I heard at home, every flicker of light, I couldn't help but jump, imagining the shadows lurking in the corners, watching me. My nights were restless, sleep often disturbed by those eerie whispers that seemed to follow me wherever I went. One night, I decided to visit the office again, feeling a strange pull to go back, to confront what I was avoiding. Armed with my flashlight and a journal to document everything, I entered the building, the familiar chill wrapping around me like an old scarf. The moment I stepped in, I was hit with a wave of darkness. It felt heavier than before, as if the shadows had multiplied in my absence. As I walked through the empty corridors, the memories flooded back. I remembered the child's pleading eyes and how we had confronted the shadows. Each step echoed, bouncing off the walls, making me feel like someone else was walking alongside me. Then, I heard it again, the soft whisper of a voice, faint but distinct. "Stay, please." It echoed just behind me, sending chills down my spine. I turned quickly, but there was nothing there except for the shadows, pooling in the corners, stretching toward me like dark fingers. My heart began to race. Fear seeped into my bones. I pressed on, fighting the urge to flee. When I reached the meeting room, my heart sank. The energy in the room was thick, and I had a bad feeling. The air felt charged like static before a storm. I flicked on my flashlight, illuminating the space. My eyes widened as I caught sight of a crumpled piece of paper sitting in the center of the table. It was a drawing similar to the ones I had seen before, but this one was different. It depicted me standing in that very room, surrounded by angry shadows. My mouth was wide open in a scream. My stomach dropped. Who had drawn this? I didn't want to think about the implications. Just then, I felt a wave of cold wash over me, and the shadows flickered, almost alive. "Leave now," they whispered, but this time it felt more urgent, more commanding. I could feel their frustrations boiling beneath the surface. I took a step back, my body screaming to run, but my curiosity got the best of me. I needed to know what was happening. I steadied my breathing and looked around the room again. It felt like I was being watched, the hairs on my arms standing tall. Then I turned back to the door, ready to leave. That's when I heard it, a soft thud, like something heavy falling behind me. Turning slowly, I found a stack of old boxes had toppled over. I felt frozen in place. I decided to investigate, my heart racing as I approached the mess. As I examined the boxes, I noticed one of them was slightly open. I hesitated before digging in, trembling with anticipation. Inside, a collection of toys lay scattered, a rattle, a stuffed bear, and even a tiny broken music box. Each item looked aged, worn down by time and neglect. Something about the music box felt wrong. I reached for it, feeling a strange pull. As my fingers brushed against it, a chilling melody began to play, sweet yet haunting. Suddenly, the shadows seemed to gather like a storm cloud, swirling closer. The whispers crescendoed into frantic pleas, and I felt the temperature drop. "Help us! Help us!" they cried, the voices merging into one continuous lament. Panic surged through me as I dropped the box. The melody mixing with their cries made my mind swirl. Without thinking, I sprinted toward the exit, but the door slammed shut as I reached for the knob, sealing my escape. I pounded against it, desperation fueling my strength. "Let me out!" I shouted, but it was no use. The shadows began to twist and thicken, swirling around me, their forms becoming more defined. I saw faces emerging, anguished, lost, forever trapped in this place. My heart raced. It felt like I was in a nightmare that wouldn't end. I turned, searching for another way to escape. The windows were covered, darkness clinging to them like a veil. I felt the weight of despair settle on my shoulders. I was not alone in this room. They were all around me, pressing in, their chilling presence suffocating. "Why did you come back?" a voice rasped in my ear, sending a shudder down my spine. I spun around, but found only darkness. "You opened the door," and now you must choose." My head spun, the weight of dread pinning me in place. I had returned to help, but was this my reward? The faces grew in number, each one more pained than the last. With each heartbeat, I felt their sadness radiating through me. "Let us go," I pleaded, my voice cracking. In that moment, something shifted. The shadows swirled wildly, forming a vortex that pulled at my very essence. I struggled against it, but the force was too strong. Just as I was about to be drawn in, the child appeared beside me, eyes wide with terror. "Don't listen. They want to take you." I felt my pulse quicken. "What do I do?" I shouted, but the shadows roared in anger, their voices rising to a fever pitch. "You are one of us now." The child grabbed my hand, pulling me toward the door. "Follow me. We can escape." We sprinted toward it, but I could feel the weight of the shadows behind us, chasing us with fury. The door rattled as we reached it, still stubbornly locked. "We can't give up," I yelled, looking back at the swirling darkness. The faces were distorted with rage, and I felt a fire ignite within me. "Let her go. You have no claim over us." Together, we rammed into the door. With one final push, the lock gave way, and the door flew open. We stumbled out into the hallway, but the shadows were right behind us, thick and angry. "You can't leave!" they screamed, echoing around us. I glanced back and saw the child's face, a mixture of fear and hope. "Keep going. We're almost there." We dashed down the hall, desperately searching for a way out. The air was electric, pulling at my clothes like invisible hands. At the end of the hall, I spotted the staircase leading to the exit. I raced toward it, the shadows clawing at my heels, ready to pull me back. I could feel their icy fingers brushing against my ankles. I leaped up the stairs 2 at a time, adrenaline surging through me. With each step, the whispers grew louder, blending into a chaotic roar of despair. "You will never forget," they cried. I could see the light shining through the door at the top, a beacon of hope urging me on. Finally bursting through the door, I tumbled into the night air and stared back at the building. Its dark exterior loomed like a great beast in the moonlight, but I didn't stop to think. I took off running, the echoes of the shadows fading, but that feeling of dread still lingered in my mind. As I reached my car, I felt an overwhelming urge to look back one last time. The building stood silent now, but deep down, I knew this wasn't truly over. Those lost souls were still there, waiting for someone else to understand their pain. Driving away, I felt their presence surrounding me, a constant reminder of what I had chosen to ignore. Each night they whispered my name, begging for release. I knew I had to return, but I also understood the danger that awaited me. In the silence of my car, under the starlit sky, I made a promise to find a way to help them. A part of me would always remain connected to that building, and I wouldn't let them down. The haunting had just begun. Days turned into weeks, and the whispers grew louder. They were like a soft breeze brushing against my ear, calling out to me in the dark. I couldn't escape them, and that urge to return grew stronger. I spent hours researching, trying to uncover more about the history of the building and its tragic past. Every piece of information felt like a key to unlocking the mystery that surrounded those lost souls. Then one day, I found something strange. A local historian mentioned a hidden room within the building, a space that had been sealed off for years, rumored to hold the key to understanding what really happened. It was said that this room held the grief of many, a resting place for the pain that had been trapped inside those walls. Feeling a mix of anticipation and fear, I knew I had to uncover the truth. My heart raced as I planned my return to the office, armed with all the knowledge I could gather. I needed to confront whatever waited for me in that hidden room. Finally, the day arrived. I walked through the doors feeling like I was entering a different world. The air was thick with memories, each breath heavy with the weight of what had come before. I made my way through the familiar halls, nerves fluttering in my stomach. I reached the meeting room again, my heartbeat echoing in my ears. I closed my eyes and concentrated, trying to feel the connection to the spirits around me. "I'm here to help," I called out, and a chilling breeze whispered through the room. "Find a room," the voices urged, their tone charged with urgency. I stepped back outside, following my instincts down a corridor I had never noticed before. The shadows loomed around me, twisting into strange shapes. I felt a sudden flicker of fear, but pressed on, determined to find that hidden space. At the end of the hall, I found a small door almost blending into the wall. My heart raced as I pulled on the knob, and it gave way easily. Inside was a dimly lit room, years of dust coating every surface. My eyes skated over the space, and I could see the remnants of a children's play area, a small table surrounded by tiny chairs. The air felt thicker here, suffocating. Toys lay abandoned on the floor, their laughter long gone. I stepped in, feeling a tingle of anticipation and dread. There had to be something here, something that would explain everything. As I searched the room, my flashlight caught glimmers of something shiny. I knelt down and brushed aside the dust, revealing a small box. My heart raced as I opened it, revealing a collection of trinkets, old photographs, broken jewelry, and notes written in shaky handwriting. Each item felt heavy with emotion. One note caught my eye, the words scrawled in desperation. "We are lost. Help us find our way back." It was signed with the initials of several children. A lump formed in my throat as I realized that they were the very children I had seen in visions, the ones trapped in the darkness. I felt their pain. It resonated deep within me. Just then, the room filled with a cacophony of whispers. "You found us," they cried, voices rising and falling like the tide. Shadows surged around the room, swirling in a frenzy. I felt their energy, a desperate need for release. I needed to respond. In that moment, I understood. These voices were not angry anymore. They were scared, lost souls searching for an escape. "I'm here to help. I promise," I said, my voice shaking. The light in the room flickered as the shadows condensed, swirling around me like a whirlpool. They were begging for me to understand, for someone to acknowledge their existence and pain. "Remember us," they pleaded, their anguish filling the air. The shadows thickened and fear filled my heart, but I wouldn't let it control me. "I won't forget. You deserve to be free," I shouted, letting my voice rise above the chaos. The room shuddered around me, the very air vibrating with their emotions. Suddenly, the whispers turned into a deafening roar, and I braced myself against the small table as the very walls trembled. I could feel the grief clawing at me, pulling me closer into their despair. I closed my eyes and focused, reaching out with my heart. "We can't do it alone," they cried in unison, filling the room with their pain. I took a deep breath, letting the knowledge of their sorrow wash over me. "I'm here. I'm with you," I promised, feeling an unexpected surge of strength fill me. Then I opened my eyes, standing tall amidst the storm of shadows. "You don't have to suffer anymore. I'm going to help you find peace," I declared. With each word, the shadows seemed to spin faster, twisting around me but loosening their grip. As I spoke, I felt something shift within the room. Energy swelled, a bright light piercing through the shadows, illuminating the space with a warmth I had never felt. Faces appeared within the light, those of children, who looked at me with sorrowful eyes. Their expressions were a mix of fear and hope. I felt the air thicken around me again, like the shadows were trying to grasp hold of their frightened souls, even as the light fought against it. I stepped closer, my heart pounding in my chest. "You don't have to be afraid. I'm here to help you find peace," I said softly. The room seemed to vibrate as the shadows twisted and churned, retaliating against the brightness that started to spread. Their cries intensified, a cacophony of desperate pleas that echoed off the walls, filling every corner of the small space. "Help us! Help us!" they chorused, their voices seeping into my very being, wrapping around me like cold fingers. In the flicker of the light, I noticed something odd. The shadows were merging into figures, contorting into shapes of children. I gasped in horror, realizing their faces were those of the lost souls. They reached out, arms stretched, with eyes wide and pleading for relief. I felt a chill run down my spine, the despair of their plight wrapping around me like a shroud. Suddenly, I noticed the walls of the room beginning to close in, the shadows pushing outward and twisting as if they were alive, determined to crush the light. The children's faces grew frantic, their expressions twisting in fear. One little girl stepped forward, her voice trembling. "You need to leave. They won't let you go." I felt a wave of panic rush through me, but I shook it off and stepped forward, determined. "No, I can't leave you like this. You deserve to be free," I shouted over the rising noise of mere cries. As I looked at the girl, I felt a strong connection to her. Her pain resonated deep within me, and I made a silent promise. I wouldn't abandon them. The shadows surged violently, flinging dark tendrils towards me, wrapping around my limbs, trying to pull me into their murky depths. I stumbled back, struggling against their grasp. They whispered threats and taunts, a blend of anger and sorrow. "You cannot escape. You belong to us now. Stop!" I yelled, filled with sudden rage and defiance. "I will not be part of your darkness." I focused, digging deep within myself to find that flicker of strength. I raised my hands, palms toward the spirits, as if I could physically push back against the shadows. "I will set you free. I won't let you suffer anymore." As I spoke, energy swirled around me, pulling the shadows into the light. A piercing cry echoed as the figures grew brighter, fighting against the dark shrouds enveloping them. The little girl looked at me with fierce determination. "We need to remember," she urged, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Remember what?" I asked, confused. "What do you need to remember?" "Us," she pleaded, and the others echoed her. "Remember who we were. Remember our names." Their voices harmonized into a haunting song, words slipping through the cracks of despair, weaving through my mind like a gentle memory. I closed my eyes, focusing deeply, letting their essence fill my heart. I thought of each child, of their laughter, their dreams, their lives cut short. The darkness screamed in protest, trying to drown out their memories, engulfing me in a storm of shadows. "Michael!" I shouted suddenly. "And Lily, I remember you. You were artists and dreamers." I pictured their smiling faces, their joy, their laughter. With each name I called out, I felt the shadows shudder as those names went forward into the light. "Keep going," the children urged, getting stronger with each memory I pronounced. "Keep remembering." I continued calling out every name I could think of, and with every name, light pushed back against the encroaching darkness. Their faces lit up with hope. The darkness around them began to tremble and flicker. "Hurry," one boy urged. "We're almost there." As I searched my mind for each child's story, the shadows fought back harder, twisting around me like a wild storm. I felt suffocated, yet I pushed onward, finding strength in their cries for freedom. "Anna, Jacob, Ellie, Mark," I cried, feeling their spirit revive with each word. Then, all at once, a shriek tore through the room. The shadows seemed to explode around us, dark tendrils flying in every direction, throwing me back against the wall. Pain shot through my body, but I didn't stop. "You can't pull me away from them," I shouted defiantly, standing upright again, fists clenched. Slowly, the bright light enveloped the children completely. Their figures began to shine with pure energy. The shadows howled in despair, their anger resonating in the very foundation of the building. I could feel the walls shaking, as if everything was on the brink of collapse. "Remember us," the children cried together again, louder than ever. "We're here." Suddenly, the walls behind me cracked, a jagged line slicing through the plaster as the shadows twisted violently. I could hear their furious screams mingling with the cries of the children. "Let them go. They belong to us." But the light was growing stronger, illuminating the entire room and forcing the darkness back. I pressed forward, determined, shouting the names with more fervor. "Sophie, James!" Each name was acknowledged with a flash of light, the shadows writhing in frustration. Finally, The eyes of the lost souls turned towards me, their expressions filled with gratitude and light. The flickering shadows began to break, their forms melting away like mist in the morning sun. "Thank you," they whispered, as the darkness finally began to recede. I felt my heart race, a mixture of fear and exultation. "You are free," I yelled, feeling the energy shift. The light enveloped them completely, a brilliant warmth spreading through the room like sunlight after a storm. Then, in an instant, the room filled with a blinding brightness, and the shadows vanished, leaving nothing but echoes of their cries behind. I was left breathless, surrounded by a silence that felt surreal and strange. As the brightness faded, I found myself standing alone in the dilapidated room. It was quiet, yet the air buzzed with an energy that spoke of hope. I stumbled back, unsure, feeling as if I were emerging from a nightmare into a new dawn. I had faced the very essence of fear and loss, yet somehow I had come out the other side. But as I turned to leave, a chilling realization crept in. The memories of those children would remain with me, each face permanently etched in my mind, their stories intertwined with mine. I felt their light radiating through me, yet uncertainty lingered in the air. As I stepped through the door, I hesitated, half expecting the shadows to return, to reclaim what I had just fought to release. I glanced back into the room, the air still and heavy. "You will not be forgotten," I whispered, knowing the journey was not over. The door clicked shut behind me, sealing the hidden room once again, but I could feel a piece of it lingering inside. The weight of the past would follow me, a reminder of what I had witnessed, of what had been freed. Driving home, I felt unsettled, the peace I had fought for contrasting sharply against the shadows that still loomed in my mind. I knew in time there would be more steps to take, more stories to unearth. There were so many lost souls in the world, shadows that just needed a light to guide them. With every passing day, I realized that my battle wasn't simply for those children. It was a fight against my own fears and the darkness we all carry. And as I reached my home, I understood that I could not run away from this. I had to continue. I had committed to walk the line between the light and the dark, ready to face whatever new horrors awaited me. The shadows were not done with me yet. The call of the lost would become a haunting anthem, echoing in my soul, reminding me that I would always be a part of their story. I took a deep breath, ready for whatever lay ahead, knowing this was only the beginning of an even deeper journey into the unknown. As I sat in my living room, the silence felt heavy. The memories of those lost children haunted me, their faces flickering like ghosts in the corners of my mind. I couldn't shake the feeling that they were still with me, watching, waiting for me to do more. The warmth I felt in the hidden room had dissipated, replaced by a cold chill. That night, as I lay in bed, I heard whispers carried on the wind. It sent shivers down my spine. I couldn't tell if it was real or just my imagination playing tricks. Each breath I took felt labored, like the air was thick with all the pain I had tried to release. With the moonlight streaming through the window, I felt an urge to look outside. Peering into the darkness, I saw shadows darting in the alley behind my house. My heart raced as I squinted, trying to make out shapes, but the shadows shifted and melted into the dark, leaving me breathless and anxious. I shook my head, convincing myself it was just the night playing tricks on me. But deep down, I couldn't escape the feeling that I was not alone. Days turned into nights, and still, I felt their presence. I began documenting everything in a small notebook, writing down my thoughts, the names of the children, and the moments I had shared with them. But as I wrote, I noticed something peculiar. The more I wrote, the more the shadows seemed to come alive. My pen raced across the paper, almost as if it had a mind of its own, scratching out haunting messages I didn't remember writing. One night, while poring over my notes, I saw a strange figure moving just outside my window. My heart pounded as I approached the glass. The figure was a silhouette in the moonlight, slightly bent and oddly shaped. I could feel my pulse quicken as I strained to see who it was. But just like before, the figure slipped into the darkness before I could fully comprehend it. The following day, I decided to visit the local library, hoping to find more about the building where I had faced the shadows. I searched through dusty old books, digging for any articles that might shed light on the lost souls. As I flipped through the pages, a chill crept down my back. I stumbled upon a newspaper clipping from decades ago. It detailed a tragic event. Several children had disappeared from the neighborhood, only to be found later in the very building I had been so drawn to. My stomach churned as I read their names. They belonged to the same children I had seen. This was their story. This was their pain. Suddenly, I felt an icy hand brush against my neck, sending me flying back from the table. My surroundings blinked as the library filled with an echoing emptiness. I spun around, heart racing, but no one was there. The shelves stood silent, but I could feel their eyes on me, shadows lurking in the corners, waiting for me to leave. Rushing out of the library, I felt the shadows wrapping around me again, pulling me down. Panic filled my lungs, but I forced myself to breathe. I couldn't allow them to take me again, not when I was so close to understanding what happened. That night, I sought refuge in my home, pacing the floor. A strange sense of urgency bubbled up within me. I needed to go back to the hidden room. The children's memories needed to be freed. Maybe I could find a way to help not just them, but anyone else who might have been lost. As I made my way to the office building, the air grew heavy and suffocating. With each step, I felt like I was being watched, the shadows creeping closer, tightening around me like a noose. Each flicker of the streetlights seemed to whisper secrets, echoing the pain of the broken spirits. Finally, I reached the entrance. The door creaked open, revealing the eerie abandonment of the hallways. The air was thick and cold, wrapping around me as I stepped inside. I walked cautiously, listening for any signs of the children. "I'm here," I called into the silence, my voice trembling. "I'm here to help you." As I made my way to the hidden room, I felt a shift in the atmosphere. A heavy weight settled on my shoulders, pulling me down. I could hear whispers, muffled voices echoing through the halls. They were fragments of laughter twisted into sorrow, haunting the corners like memories that had been trapped and forgotten. When I reached the door, I hesitated, my heart pounding. I pushed it open, stepping into the dim light spilling from my phone. In the center of the room lay the small box of trinkets, untouched, waiting for me to unlock its secrets once more. I felt their energy, a desperate plea urging me to dig deeper. As I opened the box, the whispers intensified, swirling around like a storm, and I felt the shadows closing in again. I gripped the edge of the box tightly, breathing deeply, and began to sort through its contents. Each item I picked up told a story, pieces of their lives trapped in this dark place, begging to be acknowledged. I reached for a tattered photograph of the smiling children, their faces shining with joy. But as I examined it, their eyes seemed to follow me, full of sorrow. The shadows quivered, a wind spiraling through the room, pushing harder against me. "Remember us," echoed louder, a relentless chant urging me forward. Suddenly, the walls vibrated, and the air turned frigid. The lights flickered, and I could see shapes forming in the corners, distorted and grotesque. My heart raced as the shadows grew bolder, reaching toward me like grasping hands. Their anger filled the room, and I could feel their frustration. "You cannot save us," they screamed, their voices a cacophony of despair. But the children's spirits surged around me, protecting me from the darkness, their light battling against the impending storm. "You must remember. Fight back," they encouraged. Gripping the photograph tightly, I shouted, "I will remember. I will not let their stories be forgotten." The shadows screeched in outrage, twisting violently as the light engulfed me, filling every crevice of the room with warmth. "Leave her," one shadow howled, but I stood firm, heart steady, determined to free the lost souls. Just then, the memory of a forgotten name surfaced in my mind. "Amelia!" I called out, and the room erupted with energy. The shadows paused, their forms wavering as the children cried out, "Yes, Amelia!" The darkness quivered, pulling back as if afraid of the light, surrounding her name. Under this force, I felt my power rise. "I remember your laughter, your dreams," I shouted, my voice echoing loudly. Each word sent a pulse of warmth through the air, pushing the shadows further into retreat. "I won't let you take her." In that moment of clarity, I understood that these shadows weren't just echoes of pain. They were reflections of the children's fear, longing to be set free. I focused my mind, building the connection with the spirits that had guided me. "Let them go," I cried, my resolve hardening. As my voice reverberated through the room, the figures began to unravel, disappearing into the flickering light with screams of anguish. The air grew lighter and a warmth settled over me, inching away the cold shadows that had encased me for so long. The silence that followed was deafening, but it felt transformative. I could still sense their lingering presence, a whisper of the pain that had filled this room. "Thank you," a small voice said, and I turned to see Amelia, her spirit glowing brightly. "You have freed us?" I felt tears welling up in my eyes as the remaining figures gathered around her, their eyes filled with gratitude. But as I looked at them, I noticed shadows creeping up from the corners, thick and angry. They had not vanished entirely. Before I could react, a shadow lunged at me, reaching for my heart. "You cannot stop us," it roared, filling the room with a suffocating darkness. Panic surged through me, but I stared it down, feeling the warmth of the children's spirits at my back. "I will fight for you," I declared, feeling the light radiate from within. The shadows hesitated, confusion crossing over them as I stepped forward, defying their presence. "I will not give in to fear," I shouted, my voice breaking the weight of their power. This battle wasn't over. I could feel it deep down, a lingering challenge echoing in the air. I had faced shadows before, but there was still so much more to uncover. Not just for the sake of the children, but for anyone who had ever felt lost in darkness. Determined, I realized the journey had only just begun. I couldn't allow the shadows to regain their hold. I made a silent vow to return to this building until every single lost soul was free. As I stood in the remnants of the hidden room, I could feel a fierce surge of resolve igniting within me. The allure of the darkness was strong, but the light of their names flickered brighter. I would become their voice, their defender. I would return to confront the darkness, one last time, and unveil the truth behind their suffering. And as I took in the silence left in the wake of the battle, I knew that I had made a promise, not just to the children but to myself. This was far from over, and I would be back. The dread lingered still, but so did the light, eternally illuminating my path forward. Determined to return to the hidden room, I spent the next few days preparing myself. I gathered everything I could think of that might help. Candles, crystals, a notebook filled with the children's names, and my own memories of their laughter. Each item felt like a lifeline, a bridge between the world I knew and the shadows lingering nearby. When the night came, I felt an uneasy flutter in my stomach. Darkness hung thick in the air, almost tangible, pressing down on me like a weight. As I approached the now familiar building, I noticed the wind had died down, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. Everything felt wrong, as if the world was holding its breath. I stepped inside, the door creaking ominously behind me, echoing through the empty corridors. The air was stale, heavy with the smell of dampness and decay. My heart raced as I navigated the shadows, each step feeling like an invitation to the unknown. The flickering flashlight caught glimpses of peeling paint and cracked walls. I knew I was walking towards danger, but the children's faces pushed me forward. When I reached the hidden room, an unsettling chill swept over me. I felt as if something was waiting, lurking just beyond sight. The box still lay in the center, but now it seemed different, darker somehow. I hesitated, feeling its weight pressing down on my chest, but squeezed my eyes shut and focused on why I was there. "I'm here for you," I whispered, trying to summon courage. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind me. The noise reverberated through the room, making me jump. Panic surged again, but I pushed it back down. I turned to the door, and it wouldn't budge. A sense of dread gripped me as I realized I was trapped. "Let me out!" I yelled, pounding my fists against the cold wood. But the shadows around me began to twist and writhe, taking form, dark, angry figures emerging from the corners. They moved like smoke, curling around the edges of the room. Their eyes glowed faintly, filled with malice. I felt a sharp breath at my neck, a cold whisper tickling my ear. "You can't escape us," it hissed, sending icy dread coursing through my veins. My heart raced faster, and I backed away, stumbling over my own feet. The walls seemed to close in, and the whispers grew louder, layering over each other until it became an unending chorus of despair. "Remember us," the voices shrieked, merging into a cacophony of anguish. I forced myself to breathe through the panic, clutching the items I had brought. I reached for a candle, lighting it with trembling hands. As the flame flickered to life, it cast shaky shadows against the walls, battling the encroaching darkness. "Go away!" I shouted, holding the candle high like a shield. The shadows hissed, recoiling from the flame, but they didn't retreat far. They circled me, massing as a swirling vortex of darkness. "You are one of us now," a deep voice rumbled, reverberating in my bones. "No!" I screamed, the sound ripping from my throat. "I'm here to help." The shadows suddenly lunged, and the air around me thickened with despair. I felt their fingers wrapping around my wrists, pulling me down into the darkness. Images flashed in my mind, horrific moments of loss and pain, fading laughter, as they tugged at my heart. I could see the children trapped within them, their faces twisted in anguish as they called out to me. "Help us! Don't let them take you!" I closed my eyes, channeling my inner strength and remembering their names. Amelia, Michael, Lily. The names slipped from my lips like a lifeline, each word igniting the candle's flame. With this surge of light, the shadows writhed violently, their cries turning chaotic. "Silence her!" they screamed, their forms stretching and twisting around me. My heart thudded angrily in my chest, but I embraced the warmth of the candle, pushing back against the dark. "Your names give you power," I cried, the light flickering wildly. "You are not lost. You are here." The shadows shrieked, furious at my resistance. I felt their grip falter momentarily, and I knew I had to keep going. With every name I shouted, a soft glow expanded around me. "Jacob, Sophie, Ethan." The room transformed. The shadows recoiled, wailing in defeat. Their forms began to unravel, twisting away from the light. The candle flared bright, illuminating every corner of the hidden room. I could see the faces of the children, their spirits standing strong, united against the darkness. "Fight with us!" Amelia shouted, her light radiating brighter than the others, filling me with an overwhelming sense of hope. As the shadows hissed furiously, I focused on their fear. Fear of being forgotten, fear of their own hopelessness. "You cannot keep them," I yelled, fueled by a blend of fear and determination. "I will remember you." The shadows shrank back, their eyes burning with rage, but the light spread like wildfire, igniting every corner of the room. Their voices rose in one final anguished howl, and I felt the air shift around me, a loud crack reverberating through the walls. Suddenly, the ground beneath me shook, a deep rumble that sent vibrations through every part of my being. It felt like the very foundation of the building was cracking open, as if the shadows themselves could no longer bear the light. Then, from the center of the storm, a single shadow lunged toward me. I stumbled back, my breath hitching in my throat as it dove for the candle, aiming to extinguish its light. In that split second, clarity struck. "I am not afraid of you," I shouted, my voice ringing with unfaltering resolve. With a swift motion, I thrust the candle forward, its flame igniting the dark figure into a blinding explosion of light. The explosion shattered the suffocating darkness around me, sending shockwaves through the room. The shadows shrieked, the sound piercing as they erupted in a surrounding darkness. I could see the forms of the children become clearer, their light bursting forth like a beacon. "Remember us," they sang in unison, their voices rising above the chaos, encouraging me to continue my fight. In that brilliant moment, I felt a shift within me. The fear that had gripped me started to fade, replaced by an unyielding fire of defiance. "You will not be forgotten," I shouted again, and the shadows shrank further under the weight of their own dread. Suddenly, a deafening silence fell. The echoes of their cries faded as the children's spirits gathered around me, their light now almost blinding. The shadows hissed at the edges, their forms flickering like dying embers. I stood firm, drawing strength from the bond we had formed. I felt the warmth of the candle pulse through me, calling out for their memories to rise, for their stories to break free. I could see them moving, slowly shaking off the remnants of darkness that clung to their souls. With every breath, I rode the wave of their energy, shifting the room itself. "Let go," I implored, knowing I wasn't just fighting for my safety, but for them. "You are not bound. You have wings. Fly." The walls around me cracked as the shadows shrieked one last time, their screams dissipating into the empty air. Then, with a final burst of light, the shadows vanished, leaving nothing but the lingering warmth of the children's spirits surrounding me. For a moment, everything was still. I blinked against the brightness, heart hammering, overwhelmed by the weight of what I had just faced. The hidden room felt different now, alive in a way it hadn't felt before. A soft light filled the corners, illuminating every inch of the space. As I slowly caught my breath, I felt a gentle hand on my shoulder. Turning, I faced Amelia, her spirit glowing bright. "You did it," she said, her voice soft and filled with gratitude. "You helped us find our way." Their voices filled the air like a melody, blending harmoniously, thanking me for my courage. But I knew deep inside that this was only part of the journey. I felt a pull to venture further into the unknown, to discover what lay beyond the darkness. With a deep breath, I knew I had to keep fighting. There were more lost souls out there, more battles to be won. This newly kindled light in my heart whispered promises of hope and purpose. As I stepped closer to the door, the shadows lingered at the edges still, whispering warnings. But instead of fear, I felt strength. The darkness may have tried to consume me, but I had shown it what I was capable of, and I was ready for whatever came next. With the spirits swirling brightly around me, I took one last look at the hidden room before stepping through the door. Whatever awaited outside remained unknown, but I was certain of one thing. This was just the beginning of my path into the depths of shadows and the memories that had been waiting to be set free. As I stepped through the door, a rush of cold air hit my face. It was like stepping into a different world entirely, one where shadows whispered secrets and the darkness didn't seem so far away. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the unease that had settled in my gut. The hallway stretched out in front of me, dim and claustrophobic. Flickering lights overhead cast strange shapes that danced on the walls. I could feel eyes watching me, invisible but heavy, making me acutely aware of the silence that wrapped around me like a shroud. The comforting glow of the spirits faded behind me, but I knew they were still with me, still guiding me in this newly dangerous territory. Just then, I heard a soft giggle, echoing faintly from the depths of the building. It sounded innocent, sweet, but something about it sent chills down my spine. That laughter was not right. It felt mischievous, tainted with something darker. I hesitated, caught between following the sound or turning back. I clenched my fists, reminding myself of the mission I had set out on. I can't turn back now, I told myself, feeling the heaviness in my chest lift slightly. As I walked down the hallway, the walls began to close in, the shadows stretching unnaturally. They seemed to whisper my name. "Come play with us," they echoed, teasing and taunting. My heart pounded louder as I pushed forward, determined not to let fear take control of my actions. I passed by old, rusted lockers, some ajar as though forgotten by time. Their doors creaked softly as I brushed past, and I looked inside one, half expecting something to leap out at me. Instead, I found nothing but a tattered old doll, its button eyes gazing up at me with a disturbing innocence. I shuddered, quickly shutting the door. What happened here? I wondered, the weight of despair pressing down harder on my shoulders. Continuing deeper, I felt an unsettling draft, and suddenly, the lights flickered out completely. Darkness enveloped me, the kind that felt thick and suffocating. I fumbled for my flashlight, the beam cutting through the black like a knife. It illuminated patches of damp walls and scattered debris, but also highlighted movement just out of reach. In flashes of the light, I caught glimpses of figures darting away, too quick to be real, yet too solid to be mere imagination. My breath quickened. Is someone there? I called out, but only silence answered me, thick and heavy. The creepy giggle floated through again, this time closer, echoing down the hall like a siren. Gathering my courage, I followed the sound, my heart thumping loudly in my chest. As I rounded a corner, I saw a shadowy figure standing at the end of the hall. It wore a ragged dress, its long hair hanging in tangled tendrils, obscuring its face. "Who are you?" I demanded, the words sounding weak against the oppressive quiet. The figure turned towards me. For a moment, I thought I saw a flash of a familiar smile, one of the children's faces, but before I could comprehend it, the smile vanished. In its place, I felt an overwhelming chill and darkness that wrapped around my heart like a vice. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over my own feet. "Stay back!" I yelled, raising my flashlight as if it would protect me. The figure didn't move, just stood there, watching with an intensity that made my skin crawl. "You're not supposed to be here," it whispered, the voice sweet and sickly, like honey coated in poison. "You're intruding in our play." All at once, I felt like I was drowning. The walls seemed to shift around me, pulsating with the weight of the threat that loomed. I looked away from the figure and back down the corridor, but the darkness now felt endless, stretching like a black hole ready to consume me. Panic surged again as I thought about the spirits I had just fought for. They wouldn't want me to become another lost soul. "I won't let you take me," I shouted defiantly. I turned back to the shadowy figure, trying to stall for time. Memories of the children filled my mind, how they had clung to life before being swallowed by the darkness. I wasn't here just for them. I was here to break the cycle. I thought of the light I had felt before, and it surged back within me, pushing out the fear. "No more playing," I declared, breathing deeply to steady myself. I raised the flashlight again, and the beam flickered erratically but held its course. The shadows seemed to recoil, a swirling haze of fury and despair. "Playtime is over," I said firmly, channeling all the light and hope I could muster from within. With each word, I felt the energy shift in the air, as if the shadows themselves were trembling at the strength of my resolve. The figure's laughter turned into a terrifying shriek, one that echoed down the hall like a haunting chorus of the children's torment. "You don't belong," it screeched, its voice ripping at the edges of my sanity. "You cannot escape the game." Suddenly, the lights flickered back on, illuminating the hallway in a harsh glow. I blinked against the brightness, squinting to focus on the figure that was now writhing in the light, transforming like smoke exposed to flame. The face I thought I recognized twisted again, now contorted in a grotesque mask of anger and despair. I felt my heart racing as my intuition screamed at me to run, but I stood my ground. "I will not play your games," I repeated, my voice stronger now. My grip tightened on the flashlight, the beam becoming a lifeline against the grasping darkness. In that moment, the air shifted once more. I heard the faint sounds of laughter, but this time it didn't feel menacing. It was soft like a memory. With it came a rush of warmth, the presence of the children gathering around me, their joy beginning to push through the looming darkness. "We will help," they chimed, lending me their strength. The twisted figure, sensing their power, began to writhe violently, its form distorting and stretching, becoming less solid. The shadows hissed as if furious at being challenged. "You think you can save them?" it screamed, fury lacing its every word. "You are just like us?" But I felt the children at my side, their energy radiating fiercely. They were no longer lost. They were fighting back. "Not today," I yelled, closing my eyes and focusing on the warmth that surrounded me. "Let light banish the darkness," I shouted, feeling the power of the words pulse through me. The flashlight beam intensified, blasting into the figure with a force that shook the very foundation around us. The shadows screeched again, furious and desperate, unraveling before my eyes. "You cannot win," they howled, their voices rising in a frenzy. But inside, I felt my heart steady. I opened my eyes and unleashed the combined strength of my spirit and the children's laughter. "Your game ends here," I declared, and with that exclamation, the shadows burst apart like a balloon, popping into thin air and leaving behind a palpable silence. When the dust settled, the figure was gone, evaporating into a cloud of darkness, the remnants of its anger lingering like a distant memory. The air felt lighter, freeing me from the suffocating grip it had held moments before. Breathing heavily, I looked around. The hallway seemed different now. The oppressive weight had lifted, replaced by a serene glow. The children began to appear, their forms clearer than ever, smiling with the relief of freedom. Their eyes sparkled, radiant with life as they hovered near, whispering their thanks and gratitude. "Together, we are strong," Amelia said softly, her spirit shimmering brightly. I felt an overwhelming sense of belonging as I realized I wasn't alone anymore. The fight had forged a bond between us, one that gave me purpose. But even as joy swept over me, the shadows stirred in the corners, growing restless. I understood that this victory, while significant, was not the end. There were still darker forces lurking in the depths of this haunted space, waiting for an opportunity to strike again. With that thought in mind, I gathered my courage and prepared to move deeper into the unknown. I would confront whatever other dark secrets remained, not just for the lost souls, but for the sake of my own spirit and redemption. Together with the children, I would uncover every shadow hiding in the corners and rescue every lost spirit tethered to this place. We would not stop until the very last shadow had been vanquished. As I took a step forward, the warmth of the children's spirits surrounded me like an embrace. I felt the darkness retreating behind me, but I also knew it wouldn't be long before it returned. And when it did, I would be ready, standing firm in the light, ready to protect those who needed saving. With each step, I moved closer to the heart of the darkness. Darkness is powerful, but I had learned that light from hope and courage was even stronger. And as long as I carried their memories with me, I would fight against the shadows, taking their stories with me to share with the world. The echoes of the laughter faded into the air, and I felt the children's presence linger, guiding me as I ventured deeper into the unknown, ready to confront whatever awaited me in the darkness again. As I ventured further into the unknown, the atmosphere shifted once more. The walls felt like they were closing in tighter, and the air turned cold and damp, clinging to my skin. My flashlight flickered again, casting long shadows that felt almost alive, creeping along the floor like dark tendrils reaching out to touch me. Each step I took echoed through the empty hallway, a reminder that I was alone, but also not alone at the same time. I could still feel the spirits of the children by my side, a soft warmth comforting me even as the chill seeped deeper into my bones. The laughter faded but didn't vanish entirely. It still hung in the air, mingling with the unsettling silence that felt thick like fog. Around a corner, I spotted an old classroom door slightly ajar. The wood was splintered, and I could see dust swirling in the light from my flashlight. It felt eerie, as if something had happened here long ago, a moment frozen in time. Cautiously, I pushed the door open, which creaked loudly, breaking the heavy silence around me and sending a shiver down my spine. Inside, the room was steeped in darkness, but I could make out rows of old desks, Some flipped over as if a chaotic struggle had taken place. I stepped inside, my footsteps uneasy on the creaky floorboards. A faint, musty smell filled the air, a mix of decayed paper and something else, something rotten. I scanned the room, heart racing, when suddenly, a chair scraped across the floor. I turned my flashlight toward the noise, my heart racing. Nothing was there, but I could feel it, a presence lurking in the corner. "Is there someone here?" I whispered, my voice barely a sound. The shadows seemed to swallow my words, leaving only silence in return. Feeling impulsive, I took a few more steps in, and as I did, my flashlight flickered again, plunging me back into darkness. Panic welled up inside me, but I forced myself to breathe, focusing on the glow of the spirits. "Stay with me," I whispered, feeling their warmth wrap around me like a protective blanket. Slowly, the light returned, revealing a figure standing at the far end of the room. It was hunched over an old blackboard, its back turned to me. The figure was shrouded in shadows, and I could barely make out its features. But something about its posture made my skin crawl. It felt wrong, like a puppet left to dangle on frayed strings. "Who are you?" I demanded, gathering all my courage. The figure turned slowly, its face obscured by darkness. I squinted, trying to see more clearly, but the shadows twisted around it as if they were alive, constantly shifting. "Do you want to play?" it asked in a soft, sing-song voice that sent chills racing down my spine. I felt my breath hitch, heart pounding in my ears. "Not again," I muttered, realizing it was the same kind of taunt I had heard before. "I'm not afraid of you," I said louder, trying to reclaim my confidence. The figure giggled, a sound that echoed through the empty room, bouncing off the walls. "You should be. We all want to play." As if on cue, the room began to shake. The desks rattled violently, and everything around me felt alive and chaotic, sent into a frenzy by the dark energy coursing through the air. I stumbled back, nearly losing my footing as the floor cracked under the pressure. I quickly shone my light around, searching for an escape, a way out of this nightmare. But the door I had entered through suddenly slammed shut, trapping me inside. I felt the panic rise within me, a suffocating wave that threatened to drown my resolve. "No, this can't be happening," I shouted, banging on the door, but it wouldn't budge. Instead, the laughter grew louder, more manic, swirling around me like a whirlwind of voices. "Join us," they chanted in unison, a cacophony that swirled and tangled in my mind. I closed my eyes, trying to block it out. I felt the fear creeping in again, visceral and heavy, pressing on my chest like a weight. But in that moment, I remembered the children, their warmth, their laughter. No, this was not their way. They wanted freedom, not to be trapped in this game. "I will not be part of your suffering," I yelled into the chaos, forcing every ounce of determination into my voice. The shadows seemed to recoil at my defiance, the laughter turning sharp and feral. "Leave me alone. You cannot take me." Then I willed the light inside me to grow. I envisioned it radiating from my very core, spilling out into the chaos surrounding me. My flashlight flared brighter, and for a second, the shadows shrank back, the figure's face coming into clearer view, twisted in anger and frustration. "No!" it screamed, the voice grating and monstrous, distorting as if it were about to crumble away. Something about the creature seemed familiar, its own shadows echoing the children. Had it once been one of them? I couldn't dwell on that. The room lit up as I pushed forward, courage coursing through me with every heartbeat. "I am here to save them," I cried, holding the flashlight as a weapon against the encroaching darkness. The shadows shrieked, roaring in unison, their fury mixing with fear as I advanced. With every step, I felt the children's energy surge around me, the bond we had forged giving me strength. "You will not win today," I declared, channeling the light of hope that had brought me this far. The dark figure began to dissolve under the brightness, its form flickering like a candle in the wind. As the laughter turned to wails, I felt a sense of power mounting inside me. "You are not a game. You are a memory," I shouted, letting the light explode outward. A blinding flash enveloped the room, swallowing the shadows entirely. I felt a rush of air as the darkness dissipated, leaving behind nothing but echoes of faint laughter that slowly faded into silence. When the flash cleared, I stood alone in the classroom, the oppressive energy gone, replaced by a feeling of peace. The chairs that had rattled were still, and the dust floated gently in the beam of my flashlight. I gasped, adrenaline coursing through my veins, trembling with the weight of what had just happened. I was still in the fight, and there were more shadows to face. Turning back to the door, I tried to push it open, but it still held firm. "Come on," I pleaded, but just as suddenly as it had sealed, it gave way to my touch, swinging open with an eerie creak. Stepping back into the hallway, the temperature shifted again. The air felt heavier, and the pale light flickered ominously, as if warning me about what lay ahead. A low humming filled the air, unsettling and constant, vibrating through the floor and into my bones. What now? I wondered, the question hanging heavy in my mind. The shadows seemed to coil at the edges of my vision, always lurking. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, and with each passing moment, the unease pricked at me like tiny needles. As I took a few cautious steps down the hallway, I felt a tingle at the back of my neck, the hairs standing on end. From the corner of my eye, I caught a fleeting glimpse of movement in the dark. A fleeting shadow darted past, too quick to see clearly. I turned swiftly, light beam searching, but it was gone. Just my imagination, I thought, trying to shake off my fears. But that was hard to believe when the low hum grew louder, turning into a raspy whisper that seemed to dance around me. "Help us," it pleaded, the voices shrouded in pain, drifting out of the darkness like ghostly threads. "Help us? Who needs help?" I called out, my voice shaky. An echoing silence greeted me, and the tension hung thick in the air. I could sense the shadows closing in, pressing against my resolve. I refocused, reminding myself of my purpose. "I'm here to help," I shouted, trying to summon strength. The shadows trembled, the hum turning frantic. "You're too late," they screeched, the voices swirling chaotically. "You cannot save them." But I wasn't about to back down. As I pressed on, I felt the presence of the children again, their light flickering within me. I reached deep into that light, feeling it pulse against the darkness that threatened to swallow me whole. "I will save them," I shouted defiantly into the void. The shadows coiled tighter, and a deep rumble filled the air. It was as though the very ground beneath my feet was shaking with the anger of the dark forces. With fear settling in my chest, I knew I had to act quickly. Navigating through the hallway, I felt drawn toward a door at the end. It was marked with a faded symbol, one that looked like a child's drawing gone wrong. The whispers intensified, morphing into cries that echoed off the walls, desperate and forlorn. I reached for the handle, feeling a jolt of electricity course through my body at the touch. Just as I opened the door, a surge of icy air rushed out, enveloping me in its grip. It reeked of mold and decay, and I quickly stepped inside, the door slamming shut behind me with a thunderous bang. I was plunged into a dimly lit room where shadows clung to every corner. The walls were covered in crude drawings, depicting scenes of despair and chaos, not just of lost spirits, but something darker, something that wanted to keep them trapped. In the center, a dusty mirror stood, its surface tarnished and swirling with sinister energy. Taking a step closer, I caught a glimpse of movement behind the glass. My heart raced as I leaned in, my reflection distorted into a nightmarish face, one with hollow eyes and a twisted grin. I recoiled, my breath quickening. "What is this?" I gasped, feeling my pulse thunder in my ears. The whispers swelled, a chorus of long-forgotten voices merging with those of the children, urging me forward. I approached the mirror again, compelled to look deeper. The distorted reflection began to shift, and I could see images flash. Children trapped, their faces twisted in anguish, locked in a never-ending loop of fear and sadness. "No, that isn't what they deserve," I shouted, fury igniting inside me. I felt the need to break the cycle, to free those innocent souls from the clutches of darkness. Summoning all my courage, I raised my flashlight, pointing it at the mirror's surface. "Enough!" I declared, determined to shatter the painful visions trapped within the glass. With surprising force, the light hit the mirror, illuminating the room in brilliant clarity. The screams grew louder, the shadows writhing against the light, but I could see the faces of the children within, imploring, pleading for release. "You are not forgotten," I yelled, channeling every ounce of hope I had. The surface of the mirror rippled as if it were a pool of water, vibrating against the power of my light. I could sense the shift in energy. The darkness around the mirror snapped back, howling in rage as the spirits rallied together behind me. "Break the mirror," one spirit cried, its voice ringing clear amidst the chaos. "Free us." Without hesitation, I took a step forward and plunged the flashlight into the glass. A blinding flash erupted, light piercing through the darkness, shattering the mirror into countless shards that sparkled in the air like stars breaking free from some unseen night sky. And oh, the darkness screamed, its shadows twisting violently as they recoiled from the light. The cries of anguish reached a fever pitch, echoing throughout the room, but slowly, I felt the warmth of the children's spirits wrapping around me, lifting me as I stood firm, determined to face the chaos. With every shard that fell, the faces within the glass broke free, their screams transforming into laughter, a melody of hope bursting forth into the air. I could see the children rising, their forms glowing brightly with renewed energy as they began to dance joyfully around the room. Suddenly, the oppressive darkness began to collapse in on itself, unable to withstand the power of the light. The room felt alive, resonating with freedom and love. The shadows screamed one last time before evaporating into nothing, leaving behind only the echoes of the children's laughter, no longer filled with despair, but with joy. As the glow of their spirits enveloped me, I saw the door on the other side of the room swing open. I felt a pull, urging me to follow them into the light. "Come with us," they called, their voices bright and clear, inviting and hopeful. With my heart filled with purpose, I stepped forward, leaving behind the remnants of the dark light and the shadows that had once held them captive. As I walked through the doorway, a sensation washed over me, a mix of warmth and dread. It felt like stepping through a thick curtain of fog, the air buzzing with energy. The children's laughter faded but lingered softly in the background, a reminder of hope even as I faced the uncertainty ahead. I found myself in a long corridor that felt endless. The walls were covered in strange, swirling patterns that seemed to shift when I looked directly at them. At first, I thought it was just my nerves, but then I noticed the shadows and the patterns were moving slowly, almost as if they were alive. I rubbed my eyes, trying to clear my vision, but the shapes persisted, writhing in the corners of my sight. Every step I took echoed sharply, making me feel like I was disturbing the eerie quiet surrounding me. I wanted to call out, but the words lodged in my throat, heavy with the weight of dread. I pressed on, following the gentle calls of the children that guided me deeper into the corridor. Then, a door at the end suddenly creaked open, revealing a room shrouded in darkness. A chilling breeze swept through the corridor, sending a shiver down my spine. "What now?" I whispered to myself, feeling the urge to turn back, but the murmurs of the children encouraged me to go on. As I pushed through the doorway, I was engulfed in a large, dimly lit space filled with antique furniture draped in dusty sheets. Broken chairs and tarnished mirrors lined the walls, creating a scene that felt like a snapshot from an old nightmare. The air was thick with the smell of mildew, and I felt a creeping sense of being watched. I scanned the room, heart racing, wondering what I might find. Then I noticed a large mirror hanging crookedly on the wall across the room. Its surface was murky and clouded, reflecting only the dim light around it, but I felt drawn to it. Was it merely a reflection, or was something more lingering behind the glass? Cautiously, I stepped forward, my feet making almost no sound against the wooden floor. But just as I was about to reach out to touch the mirror, a loud crash echoed behind me, jolting me into a state of panic. I spun around, flashlight beam darting in all directions, but only darkness greeted me. "Hello," I called out, trying to mask the tremor in my voice. The only response was the faint sound of shuffling, like footsteps dragging across the floor, drawing closer and closer. My breath came in quick bursts, and I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. I fought to keep my panic at bay, knowing I had to stand my ground no matter what. "Stay strong," I reminded myself, taking one hesitant step toward the source of the noise. "You are not alone." The whispers of the children seemed to echo in my mind now, gently reminding me of the promise I made to save them and all the lost spirits in this place. With newfound resolve, I turned back toward the mirror. To my shock, I saw faces, twisted and sorrowful, pressed against the glass, their mouths moving soundlessly, begging for release. Their eyes were wide with fear, and I felt a chill run through me as I realized they were trapped. My heart ached for them. It was clear they had suffered long enough. "Please," I whispered, reaching out to the mirror, feeling a strong urge to free them. The moment my fingers brushed against the cool surface, the room vibrated, and the shadows around me swirled violently. The whispers grew into a frantic cacophony, the voices merging into an overwhelming clamor that filled the room. "Help us! Help us!" Suddenly, the mirror cracked, spiderwebs of darkness splintering across the surface. The shadows lurched and twisted, pulling away from the light that emanated from my flashlight. "No!" I shouted defiantly, willing the light to grow brighter, to push back against the darkness. But the more I focused, the more the shadows fought back, swirling around me like a storm. I felt a cool presence wrap around my throat, tightening like an invisible noose. The pressure made it hard to breathe, and I gasped for air, desperate to free myself from this ominous hold. "Fight it!" I yelled, reminding myself of the children's laughter. "You're stronger than this." I clawed at the shadows clutching me, feeling their cold energy pulsing at my skin. In that moment of desperation, I thought of the spirits waiting for freedom and let out a scream of defiance, pouring all my energy into my voice. "Get away from me!" As soon as the words escaped my lips, a surge of light erupted from my flashlight, piercing through the darkness like a beam of hope. The shadows shrank back, wailing as they lost their grip on me. I stumbled, falling to the floor, but I quickly scrambled back to my feet, fueled by adrenaline. The mirror continued to crack, and the faces within wailed in desperation. "Help us! Don't let them take us!" My heart broke for them. The echoes of their suffering resonated within me. I knew this was it. I had to break the cycle and shatter the darkness once and for all. Rushing forward, I slammed my palm against the fractured surface of the mirror. "You are free!" I shouted, and the moment my voice rang out, a brilliant light filled the space, flooding the room with warmth and energy. It was as if dawn had arrived in a place shrouded in eternal night. The cracks in the mirror began to glow, and with one final shout, "Be free!" the mirror shattered completely, bursting apart into shimmering fragments. Each piece danced in the air like tiny stars, scattering the darkness and freeing the trapped spirits from their torment. With every shard that fell, the spirits wrenched themselves from the confines of the rift, rising into the air like wisps of smoke transformed into light. Their laughter blossomed, a beautiful melody that intertwined with the gentle whispers of the children, filling the room with a sense of freedom that washed over me like a warm tide. As the last remnants of darkness faded, I stood there, breathless, but filled with hope. The air felt lighter, the shadows less oppressive. But before I could catch my breath, I heard a soft but sinister giggle behind me. I turned slowly, heart racing once more, my eyes sweeping across the room. The shadows hadn't completely disappeared. In the far corner of the room, where the light from my flashlight barely reached, something darker loomed. It was a figure, tall and gangly, its face obscured by a hood. Did you really think it would be that easy? It rasped, the voice scratching at my insides like nails on a chalkboard. Every instinct told me to run, but my feet felt like stone. The figure stepped closer, and a frigid gust of wind rushed through the room, chilling me to my very core. You foolishly thought you could release them from my grasp. In that moment, I remembered the truth, that darkness always lashes out when losing ground. I'm not afraid of you, I shouted, adrenaline flooding my veins once again as I raised my flashlight defiantly. Oh, but you should be. The figure's laughter echoed as it lunged forward, a blur of shadows and malice, hungry for revenge. I stumbled backward, instinctively swinging the flashlight, but it passed right through the figure, as if there was nothing there at all. My heart raced, and I felt panic clawing at my insides. Fight, the children's whispers urged, their spirits hovering protectively around me, pushing me to stand firm. I closed my eyes for a moment, breathing deeply, and gathered my thoughts. Light had defeated shadows before. I had to believe it would do so again. I opened my eyes and took a firm stance. You won't take me, I declared loudly, channeling every ounce of courage I could muster. The flashlight beam intensified, a beacon of brightness cutting through the growing darkness surrounding me. As the light surged, I could see the figure recoiling, the shadows writhing violently around it. No, it screamed, as if my light was a weapon burning away its very existence. I pressed forward, determined to push it back, to expose the truth behind its twisted form. The shadows began to fracture, and in that moment, I noticed something, glistening tears forming in the figure's hollow eyes. You don't understand, it howled, its voice riddled with agony. They are mine. They belong here. Not anymore. I cried out, fueled by determination. They deserve freedom, and I will fight for it. The light blazed brighter once more, illuminating the space around me. The room trembled, and I could feel the power of the children supporting me, their spirits wrapping around me like a shield. With one last push, I thrust the flashlight directly toward the figure, and in a brilliant flash, the shadows erupted with a fierce scream. The dark shape twisted violently, flailing as everything began to dissolve, its anguished face disappearing into a whirlwind of smoke and light. Then, an otherworldly silence enveloped me, the air still and heavy. And just like that, the oppressive presence was gone. I stood there alone, breathless yet relieved, surrounded by the remnants of the shattered mirror. The children's laughter returned, swirling around me like a gentle breeze, echoing with gratitude. Each spirit flickered brightly, their eyes no longer filled with sadness, but with a joy that radiated warmth. I felt their energy blending together, forming a golden light that wrapped around me, lifting my spirits. Thank you, they chimed, their voices melding into a sweet symphony. You saved us. A wave of warmth washed over me, filling the emptiness that had lingered in my heart. I smiled, realizing that we had not only liberated them, but that we had forged an unbreakable bond through our shared struggle. As the golden light shimmered, a new path unfolded before me. It was unclear what lay ahead, but I felt invigorated, ready to embrace whatever came next. This place held secrets, and I was determined to uncover them, not just for myself, but for all the lost spirits seeking solace. Together, with the strength of the children echoing within me, I took a step forward into the unknown, prepared to unravel the mysteries of the darkness that still existed in this haunted realm into the murky depths of this place. Each step felt heavy, the air growing colder and more oppressive. The golden light of the children's spirits faded behind me, leaving me alone again in the dim room, shadows stretching around me like grasping fingers. I could hear faint scratches, a soft scraping sound, echoing off the walls like nails on a chalkboard. My heart raced. I glanced over my shoulder, but saw only darkness. What now? I muttered nervously, the weight of the silence almost suffocating. With no choice but to press on, I approached another doorway at the end of the hall. It was smaller, shaky, as if it hadn't been used in ages. The handle was icy, and I hesitated for a moment, an unsettling feeling clawing at my gut. "Come on," I whispered to myself, pushing the door open. It creaked loudly, the sound slicing through the silence as a chill swept past me. What I found inside was another world, a small, dimly lit room lined with dusty bookshelves that towered above me. The old tomes were bound in cracked leather, their spines faded and weary. I could see cobwebs hanging from every corner, thick and sticky like forgotten memories. As I stepped in, the door slammed shut behind me with a loud bang that made me jump. The sudden noise startled something in the shadows, a brief flicker of movement, but just as quickly, it vanished. A heavy sensation sank in my stomach, like I was being watched. I turned slowly in a circle, scanning the room for signs of life. Instead, the dusty air filled with silence, thick and heavy. That's when I noticed a book laying open on a small table in the center. Its pages were yellowed, and the words were scribbled in an uneven hand. Curiosity got the better of me, and I approached, leaning over to read the faded writing. It spoke of the lost souls bound to this place, trapped by darkness, never able to find peace. Each line seemed to pulse with a sense of urgency, as if the very words reached out to me. Suddenly, I felt a rush of cold air, and the temperature dipped sharply, making me shiver. I glanced at the door. It felt heavier than before, as if something were pressing against it from the other side. The scratching noises grew louder, echoing through the small space, the sound like claws scraping against wood. Panic surged inside me, my heart racing in my chest. I took a step back, bumping into the edge of the table. As I steadied myself, the shadows began to creep out from behind the shelves, thick and oily, pooling on the floor like a dark liquid. Then, from within the shadows, I saw eyes, glowing and hungry, peering at me with a hunger that made my skin crawl. They were everywhere, encircling me, watching me, waiting for the right moment to strike. "Stay back!" I shouted, raising my flashlight, but the beam flickered, the light dimming as if swallowed by the darkness. A voice emerged from the shadows, low and rasping, like the sound of dry leaves rustling in a graveyard. "You shouldn't have come here," it hissed. I staggered back, fear cracking through my resolve. "You're going to regret it." Before I could respond, the shadows lurched forward, surging over the table, reaching with long, claw-like fingers. I turned to flee just as the table flipped over, sending books flying and scattering into the darkness. One book landed open beside me, its pages fluttering with a life of their own, and the words jumped out at me, a chilling warning: beware what lies in the dark. The door rattled violently, the shadows pushing against it, slamming it repeatedly as if trying to break through. I could feel the walls closing in, the air thickening with dread. "Not like this," I thought, desperation clawing at my throat. I spotted another door on the back wall, slightly ajar, beckoning me with a glimmer of light. Summoning every ounce of courage, I dashed toward it, the shadows swirling around me like angry wasps. They whispered curses, their voices melding into a chaotic chant. "You will join us. You will not escape." I gripped the handle of the door, praying it would open, and to my surprise, it gave way easily. I rushed through just as the shadows lunged at me, a dark wave crashing against the door just as I slipped inside. I found myself in a narrow passageway bathed in a strange, sickly light that flickered above me. The walls were lined with old photographs, images of children who appeared lost, their faces morphed in expressions of agony, forever trapped in despair. I felt bile rise in my throat as I realized these were more victims of the darkness, their souls caught in the same hell I was trying to escape. As I pressed forward, I noticed that at the end of the hall stood a large, ornate door. It was immense, made of dark wood, and engraved with unsettling symbols that wriggled as if alive. The air around it shimmered, pulsed with an energy that felt both inviting and terrifying. I approached warily, each step sending tremors through my body. The air grew thick with tension, and the haunting cries of the lost children slipped through the cracks, echoing painfully in my ears. "Help us, please," their voices called softly, almost drowning out the scratching sounds that now seemed to come from every direction. Then came a chilling realization. The door was not merely a gateway. It felt like a barrier between worlds, and I could sense that whatever lay beyond was ready to break through. The whispers grew louder, urgency building in their tone. "Help us before we are all consumed." It was as if the door itself was a living creature, breathing and waiting. I didn't know what lay behind it, but I felt a pull, an undeniable urge to open it and confront whatever waited inside. My heart pounded harder with each beat, torn between fear and the promise of freedom for those trapped souls. Taking a deep breath, I reached for the handle, an electric charge flooding my fingers. As I turned it, the door groaned, a deep and resonant sound, shaking dust off the walls. I hesitated for just a moment, wrestling with doubt, but the children's calls surged. Through me again, igniting determination. Gathering every ounce of courage, I swung the heavy door wide open, a blast of cold air rushing forth. The room beyond was flooded with darkness, swirling like a storm. I could feel the weight of despair pressing against me, clawing at my skin, but I stepped through nonetheless, grit and resolve pushing me forward. The moment I crossed the threshold, the door slammed shut behind me, sealing me in a world where shadows danced and darkness whispered promises of despair. The room was vast, almost cavernous, yet suffocatingly close, the darkness enveloping me in its grasp. I felt the fear rise, but I held it at bay, determined to shine my light against the shadows that threatened to overpower me once more. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the void, its shape shifting and swirling, a nightmare come to life. It stood tall, a grotesque imitation of a human, its limbs twisted and unnatural, a face devoid of features except for hollow eyes, voids that dripped with luminescent darkness. "You shouldn't have come here, little seeker," it crooned, its voice like ice sliding its way into my soul. In that moment, everything I feared coalesced into that single figure. The echoes of the lost children swirled around me, filling the air with their cries, urging me to fight, to stand my ground. "Leave them alone!" I shouted, the words tearing from my throat like a battle cry. I gripped my flashlight tighter, heart racing as I rooted myself to the spot. "I won't let you take anyone else." The creature's laughter rang out, a piercing sound that echoed off unseen walls, reverberating deep within me. "Oh, but you cannot save them. They belong to the darkness now, and so will you." Shadows warped around it, clawing and writhing like restless spirits. The temperature in the room dropped sharply, freezing me in place. I could feel the dread seep into my bones, but as I called upon the courage I had found in the children's laughter, a surge of warmth glowed from within me, contrasting the icy grip of my fears. "Not today!" I yelled defiantly, raising my flashlight. "I will free them." The beam pierced through the darkness, cutting a swath of brilliant light that pushed back the shadows momentarily. The creature recoiled, its features twisting in fury, vacant eyes narrowing to slits. "You think your light can conquer me?" it hissed, slinking forward as the shadows lunged, eager to consume me whole. But I wouldn't back down. This was my chance to break the cycle, to release the spirits trapped in this twisted place. I closed my eyes for a moment, focusing on the radiant energy of the children's spirits and the hope they had shared. "I won't fail them," I whispered fiercely, opening my eyes wide. With all the strength in my voice, I shouted, "Reclaim your light." The flashlight burst forth with a blinding flash, brighter than the sun. It erupted into brilliant tendrils that snaked around the room, illuminating every inch of darkness. The creature shrieked, its shrill voice pierced the air, drowning out the cries of pain that mixed with the beautiful laughter of the children. As the light expanded, it engulfed the shadows, unraveling the dark figure that tried so hard to swallow me. The cold receded, chased away by the warmth of hope. I felt the energy of the lost spirits surge around me, their presence asserting its power, creating a protective circle against the darkness. With every breath, I felt lighter, the oppressive weight lifting as the creature twisted and writhed, shadows evaporating into nothingness. "You cannot take them," I yelled, pouring every ounce of my will into those words. In one final surge of light, I focused all my energy, and with a deafening roar, the darkness shattered into fragments, dissolving like smoke in the wind. The room fell silent, the shadows vanquished, leaving me alone in the light. I stood there, breathless, a mix of fear and victory coursing through me as I realized the whispers of the lost children had turned to joyful cheers. A warm glow filled the room, and I knew that the spirits had been set free at last. As the golden light enveloped me, I felt a sense of purpose surging within, knowing that this journey was far from over. With each step I took, I would uncover the truth behind this place, with the children beside me in spirit. No longer would darkness rule. As the glow faded, a heavy stillness settled around me. I took a deep breath, finally feeling the warmth of light in this haunting place. But the silence was a deceptive comfort, and an uneasy feeling crept back in, crawling up my spine. I glanced around, searching for any signs of movement. The room around me seemed different now, though I couldn't quite place it. The walls were lined with more pictures, but they felt more alive. Their eyes seemed to follow me as I moved. I shuddered, but I couldn't turn back. I had come too far, and there were still souls that needed saving. As I stepped further into the room, I noticed a mirror on the wall, framed in ornate carvings that twisted and warped, focusing light in odd ways. My heartbeat quickened. The glass was dark, reflecting nothing but shadows. But as I approached, the shadows within the mirror began to shift. "Look closer," the whisper came, soft and haunting, slithering into my ears. I squinted at the glass, trying to see what lurked inside. Suddenly, faces emerged in the glass, distorted like those old photographs, filled with fear and desperation. "Help us!" they cried silently, their mouths moving but no sound escaping. My gut twisted in response. I stepped back, my mind racing. Not again, I thought, feeling the familiar dread return. This place was alive with suffering, and it wanted me to feel it too. I turned away from the mirror, but the feeling of being pulled back was overwhelming. As I turned, an icy wind blew through the room, swirling around my legs and sending a chill through my body. The air crackled with energy, and I could hear faint laughter, twisting like a sinister melody. "You think you are free? You think we are done?" The voice taunted, echoing off the walls. My chest tightened. "No," I whispered, clutching my flashlight. It felt like my only weapon against the creeping dread. But the laughter only grew louder, echoing in a mocking tone, as if it could sense my fear. I fought against the feeling, pushing down the panic. "I will not be defeated," I told myself harshly. Then, I felt something brush against my back. I whipped around, flashlight raised, but nothing was there. A slithering tentacle of shadow crept across the floor, and I gasped as it reached for my ankle. I jumped back, barely avoiding its grasp. "Leave me alone!" I yelled, swinging the flashlight wildly. With each flicker of light, the shadows recoiled, but they kept coming, a mass of darkness swirling and howling with rage. The laughter grew frenzied, twisted into screams of anguish. "You can't escape. We will find you." Desperate, I turned back to the mirror, hoping to use it against the encroaching darkness. The faces were still there, pleading and desperate. I stepped closer, my breath catching in my throat. "What do I do?" I asked, feeling the weight of their torment pressing down on me. Their eyes widened, and I could almost hear them whispering through the glass. "You must break it. Shatter the dark." With newfound determination, I raised my flashlight, channeling every ounce of energy I had left. I aimed it directly at the mirror's surface, the beam piercing through the sinister images. The shadows screamed, a deafening cacophony that drowned out everything else. As the light hit the glass, it began to shimmer, rippling like water disturbed by a stone. I pushed harder, focusing with all my might. Dark tendrils reached out from the mirror, trying to pull me in, but I held my ground. "You will not take me," I shouted defiantly. Then, with a final surge of power, I threw my flashlight against the mirror. The glass shattered with a powerful crash, sending shards flying through the air like spears of light. Each piece reflected the dark shadows, pinning them momentarily as they howled in fury. I felt the rush of power as the spirits screamed in joy, their faces lighting up the space around me. But just as quickly, the darkness began to solidify again. I had only bought myself a moment. The remaining shadows roared, a furious storm of rage swirling around me, battering against the light. In the chaos, I grabbed one of the larger shards, its edge glinting ominously. Maybe I could use it to finish what I started, to truly break their hold. The laughter turned into wicked cackles, echoing around me. "More weapons? It won't help," they taunted. Not knowing how much time I had left, I ran to the nearest wall, where I could see the shadows crowding, masses of darkness writhing like snakes. I took a deep breath, heart pounding, and thrust the shard into the wall. The instant it made contact, the room erupted with a blinding light, unlike anything I had ever seen. The shards of the mirror that still hung around me glimmered with a fierce glow, illuminating every inch of the twisted space. I felt the shadows draw back, shrieking in fury as if they were physically burned by the light. The walls around me shuddered, the energy crackling in the air. I could see the faces of the lost children press against the edges of the shadows, their tiny hands reaching out for freedom. "Save us! Save us!" they chanted softly, their voices filled with hope and need. But the creature was relentless. "You think you can lock us away? You think you can erase us?" It hissed, the voice oozing through the cracks. The temperature plummeted again, a bitter chill biting into my bones. "Of course I can," I shouted back, determination fueling me. I took another shard and hurled it deeper into the shadows, watching it splinter the darkness like a hammer breaking glass. The cries of the tortured souls echoed around me, their joy intermingling with the creature's furious howls of defeat. As more shards collided with the walls, I could feel a shift. The darkness was waning, shrinking before the overwhelming light. I breathed a sigh of relief, only to realize I was being pulled deeper into the chaos. The shadows swirled violently, wrapping around my legs, trying to drag me down. With a surge of adrenaline, I fought back, pulling the final shards from the remaining pieces of the broken mirror. My flashlight flickered but stayed strong, lighting up the air like a beacon. With one final push, I threw the last shards into the heart of the swirling darkness. The shadows exploded, a blinding flash of light racing through the room, swallowing the dark hole. With an ear-splitting roar, the dark figure disintegrated, screaming as its essence was scattered to the winds. A wave of warmth enveloped me as the lost souls erupted around my feet like bright stars, swirling with joy. Tears glimmered in the air where they floated, and I felt their relief wash over me. "Thank you," they sang, their voices harmonizing in sweet melody. "You did it!" But the job wasn't finished yet. I glanced around, seeing remnants of darkness curling at the edges of the room. There had to be a way to ensure this wouldn't happen again. This place needed cleansing. That's when I noticed the altar at the far corner, barely lit in the aftermath of the explosion. It was covered in dusty items, old candles, trinkets, and scattered bones. A deep sense of dread washed over me. I could feel the leftover energy swirling around the altar, still teeming with dark power. I stepped closer, feeling the weight of every gaze pressing into me. The air crackled with tension. I had to act quickly before the darkness reformed. "What can I do?" I murmured, scanning the altar for anything that might help. As if in response, one of the candles flickered, and I snatched it up, my heart racing. Light, I thought desperately. Light can purify, can cleanse this place. I rummaged through the bone and trinkets, hoping to find a lighter or something to ignite it. Amongst the clutter, I found a rusted old blade. With shaking hands, I held it up to the candle flame, waiting for a spark. "Come on," I urged, frustration bubbling inside. The shadows were crawling closer again, whispering sinister threats, trying to distract me with fears of failure. Finally, the candle caught. I felt the heat surge in my palm as I held the flame to the blade. The metal ignited in brilliant light, illuminating the dark corners of the room. My breath hitched. This was it. I lifted the flaming blade high, focusing on the altar, on every dark fragment still clinging to this place. "I command you to leave," I shouted, pouring all my will into the flame. "Begone!" The shadows recoiled, forming a spiraling vortex, howling in anger. I could feel their desperation, their aggression pouring in waves against me. But I didn't falter. "You cannot have them. Not anymore." With a swift motion, I plunged the glowing blade into the heart of the altar. The flames erupted, bursting forth like a raging storm, consuming everything in sight. The shadows writhed and shrieked, pulled into the inferno I had unleashed. I could hear the cries of every captured spirit, now filled with ferocious joy as they broke free from their chains. The last of the darkness shattered into a million pieces, scattering like ashes in the wind. A calm washed over the room as silence returned, the air clearing of heaviness. I fell to my knees, panting, the last remnants of fear and exhaustion falling away, replaced by a soaring relief. I had done it. The darkness was broken, the spirits freed, and a wave of gratitude and warmth wrapped around me, lifting my spirits higher. The light in this place felt safe, a sanctuary against the night. But as I sat there gathering my breath, a new noise crept into the stillness, a low, rhythmic tapping from deep within the shadows. My heart sank as I glanced back at the broken altar. The tapping grew louder, an ominous heartbeat resonating through the floor. It felt like something was awakening, stirring in the darkness, roused from its slumber. The echoes of the past whispered warnings in my ears. What if it isn't over? What if something worse is coming? The air thickened again, and I couldn't shake the feeling of dread settling in my chest. I tightened my grip on the candle, preparing for what might emerge from the depths of the shadows. Each thud pulsed like a drum, resonating through the walls and echoing my fear. It was a countdown. Something malignant was rising, and I stood on the edge, uncertain but ready to face whatever emerged next. Each thud pulsed like a drum, resonating through the walls and echoing my fear. I took a step back, heart racing, scanning the remnants of the altar. The air felt electric, crackling with energy as I braced myself for whatever was about to emerge. The shadows shifted in response, curling like smoke, drawing together to form something darker, a mass of swirling darkness that began to solidify. I held my breath, tightly gripping the candle as fear washed over me. What had I awakened? Suddenly, a figure pushed through the shadows, rising like a ghost from the depths. It was tall and twisted, the edges of its form flickering in and out of focus, revealing a vaguely humanoid shape. But its face was a void, an absence of features that left my stomach churning. The only light came from the candle clutched in my hand, casting eerie shadows that danced wildly against the walls. "You think you can save them?" the thing hissed, its voice low and dripping with malice. "You think you can stop us?" I felt my courage waver, doubt gnawing at my heart. "I won't let you hurt anyone else," I replied, my voice shaking even as I tried to sound defiant. It laughed, a harsh, rattling sound that echoed through the room. "You're too late, little light. We have already seeped into their hearts. They are ours." Panic flooded me. "No, they are free." I broke the darkness. I yelled, but my words felt weak against the wave of despair creeping through the air. The creature stepped closer, its presence suffocating. I felt the chill wrap around my throat, squeezing like a vice, as if the very shadows craved my fear. I searched for a way out, but the shadows loomed like a thick fog, blinding me to escape. "What do you want?" I gasped, trying to keep my mind clear. "We will feed off your terror," it howled, reaching out with elongated, claw-like fingers that twisted and flickered in the dim light. I could see the remnants of my own bravery reflected in its empty eyes, and my blood ran cold. That's when I noticed the flickering light from the shards around me. The pieces of the broken mirrors still glowed where they lay scattered across the floor, illuminating the darkness with a soft radiance. It made me realize I could use this. "Stay back!" I shouted, turning slowly to gather the shards, the panic turning into determination. "I will not give you anything." With trembling hands, I gathered the shards, their edges sharp and shimmering. I felt the energy rising from them, a charge that pulsed with the power of the light. The creature hesitated, its dark form shivering as if afraid. I held a shard high, pointing it threateningly at the monster. "You've taken too much already. It's time to end this." The thing sneered, its laugh a blend of anger and amusement. "You think those little pieces can stop me," it said, but I could sense its unease. I stepped forward, aiming the shard where I could see the void of its face. "I know you're afraid. The light can banish you," I said, filled with the strength of the spirits surrounding me. With a swift motion, I hurled the shard at the creature, feeling the weight of desperation behind my throw. It struck the ground, shattering into 1,000 glimmering pieces. A burst of light erupted, illuminating the entire room. The creature shrieked, a sound that tore through the silence like razor blades, a piercing whine that rattled my bones. I pressed forward, forcing more shards into the darkness, rapidly throwing them one after the other like bullets of light. Each impact sent shockwaves through the air that rattled the eerie stillness. "Not so strong now, are you?" I yelled, gaining courage as the creature writhed under the onslaught of light, shadows peeling away like layers of skin. But the darkness retaliated, snapping back violently. The air thickened as the shadows lunged, coiling around me, trying to bind my legs again. I could feel their icy touch, clinging like chains. "You cannot escape," they hissed, terror filling my throat as I fought to stay upright. With a surge of strength, I pulled free and reached for the last remaining shard, its tip glowing ferociously. "I will not let you win," I shouted, gripping it tightly as I charged forward, aiming straight for the heart of the monster. As I plunged the shard into its core, the creature roared, a sound so filled with rage and despair that it threatened to rip apart the walls. The light exploded from the point of impact, engulfing the darkness in a brilliant blaze, illuminating everything around me. I closed my eyes for an instant, feeling the warmth wash over me. The piercing shriek turned into a mixture of howls and cries as the shadows began to unravel. The monstrous figure shrank back, distorted features twisting in agony, unable to withstand the overpowering force of light. As the light grew, I saw the faces of the trapped souls flickering within the darkness, their eyes brightening with hope and recognition. "Help us," they whispered, their voices louder now, merging with the light that engulfed everything. The creature's form splintered, disintegrating under the relentless explosion of warm brilliance. "You will pay for this," it screeched one last time, but the sound faded as the light consumed it, leaving only echoes in the stillness. When I finally opened my eyes, the room was filled with a serene glow. The monstrous figure was gone, vanquished, leaving behind a gentle radiance. I collapsed to my knees, gasping for breath, feeling a heavy weight lift off my shoulders. But around me, the light flickered uncertainly. I could sense remnants of darkness trying to cling back into existence. My heart raced as I struggled to catch my breath. The shards lay scattered, their glow dimming as shadows crawled back into the corners of the room. I shivered, realizing the battle for this place wasn't over yet. The light had repelled the monster, but it had not fully cleansed the darkness. Standing up slowly, determination surged within me again. "I will finish this," I whispered, feeling the weight of the souls behind me. They were watching, waiting for me to believe in them and confront whatever lingering shadows remained. With each step, I walked toward the edges of the room, spreading my hands wide. "You will not come back," I declared, voice steady and resolute. I proclaimed this place free, but the shadows twisted in response, writhing like hungry beasts. Cold whispers filled the air, swirling around me, seeking to drown my resolve. "You don't belong here," they hissed, taunting. "You're just a flicker against the storm." Ignoring their taunts, I focused on the shards, drawing energy from the radiant remnants. I could feel the spirits still lingering, their presence fortifying my strength. Together, I thought, we can drive this darkness away. I closed my eyes, allowing the memories of the lost children to flood my mind, their laughter echoing through the void. In that moment, I felt a spark ignite deep within, a current surging through me. "Light, hear my call," I chanted, pouring my heart into those words. No more shadows will hold this place. The air pulsated around me, vibrating with energy as I raised my arms, drawing all the shards close in an arc. A blazing light enveloped me, bright and fierce, banishing the cold tendrils that gripped my legs. But as the warmth spread, I felt something lurking just out of sight, a deeper shadow, a heavier presence, pulling at the edges of my consciousness. Panic gripped my heart as I felt the whispers intensify, clawing at my sanity. "Leave now." They came again, my own voice feeling foreign. "You cannot withstand the shadow of what was." But I refused to listen. Stepping confidently into the heart of the swirling vortex of shadows, I filled my spirit with light, surging forward, shattering the darkness with every ounce of energy until it splintered in a blinding burst. As the shadows came crashing down, I heard the distant laughter of the lost souls joining in, sparkling like shimmering stars cascading through the air. The energy swelled, lifting me off the ground, and in that moment I felt invincible, a part of something much larger than myself. But just as quickly, the shadows began to twist again, reforming and swirling as an even darker entity emerged, one that sent shivers down my spine. Its shape was vague yet powerful, an almost solid figure cloaked in deeper darkness, its fangs glimmering like daggers in the faint light. "You think it ends here?" it boomed, voice echoing with the weight of ages. My heart raced as dread pooled in my stomach. This was a darkness that seemed to stretch beyond this realm, a presence that had existed long before I had even stepped foot in this place. I steeled myself, holding tight to my shard of light, but I couldn't shake the sudden feeling of being overwhelmed. This thing was unlike anything I had faced before, an embodiment of nightmares that would stop at nothing to eradicate light from the world. The shadows pulsed, and with a flick of its wrist, they shot toward me like arrows, black tendrils closing in, hungry for my essence. I ducked, barely avoiding the first wave, but I knew I couldn't run forever. I had to stand my ground. "Light is stronger than you think," I shouted, voice filled with determination as I channeled all the spirit of the children into my words. The figure paused, momentarily taken aback by my defiance. "I will consume you," it hissed, advancing menacingly as the shadows thundered behind it in a deafening crescendo. "No, you will not take me," I yelled back, summoning the energy of the light once more. I rushed forward, the shard raised high above my head, and leaped into the fray, believing in every soul that had been tortured by darkness. With a cry that tore through the air, I drove the shard deep into the heart of the shadowy entity. Light erupted from the impact, a brilliant flare that burst forth, illuminating everything around me. Light erupted from the impact, a brilliant flare that burst forth, illuminating everything around me. The darkness screamed, a sound so primal it made the walls shudder. The light cut through the blackness, slicing it apart like fragile paper, but the creature fought back, its form shifting and writhing as if trying to reshape itself from the shards of light. I could see the shadows retract, but they didn't disappear entirely. They curled around the edges of the room, like a wounded animal licking its wounds. A part of me thought I could see desperate faces amid the swirling shadows, eyes wide and terrified, as they pleaded for mercy. "Help us," the whispers echoed, distorted, echoing through my mind until I felt I might crumble. There was a flicker of movement at the corners of my vision, a grotesque dance of darkness clawing at the light, melting around me like liquid night. Mustering every ounce of strength, I pressed on. "You will not win," I shouted, voice trembling with a mix of fear and fierce determination. "I will banish you. I command you to leave." The shadows surged, rushing toward me like a tidal wave, hungry and desperate, determined to claw me back into their depths. I felt myself getting pulled, the very ground seeming to shift beneath my feet, the air thickening with dread. Not again, I thought, panic surging in my chest. In that moment, I remembered the lost souls, the kids who had been trapped. I couldn't let their suffering be in vain. I focused on their voices, chanting in my mind like a protective spell. "We are together in this. Light will cleanse." Feeling newfound hope, I raised the shard even higher, the light brightening as my heart raced. Unlike before, I could feel warm energy radiating from the shard, almost as if it was drawing strength from my very being and the spirits around me. I took a step forward, pushing against the encroaching darkness. "Leave this place. You have no power here," I yelled as the shimmer from the shard began to pulse, resonating with the ripples of light cascading around. The shadows halted, recoiling like a wounded beast, twisting in helpless confusion, their ominous forms hissing with fury. But then came a chilling, sinister laugh from the monster, echoing through the dark void. "You think you can cast me out?" It sneered, its voice thick and venomous, vibrating through the air. "You're just a flicker in the night. I am the night." The shadows coiled around me, filling the room with an overpowering chill that surged through my body, threatening to drown me in a sea of darkness. My vision blurred as panic clawed at my throat, wrapping around my heart and squeezing. "No, I can't let it in." I stumbled backward, desperately trying to shake off the icy grip that wrapped around my body like chains. "Fight back," I whispered to myself, remembering the laughter of the children, the flickering spirits so close, urging me to stand firm. I took a deep breath and focused, channeling everything I had into the shard. The light brightened, becoming blinding as I flung myself forward once more. The shard aimed straight at the heart of the creature. "Be gone!" I shouted, heart pounding with the weight of every soul pressing behind me. As the shard hit, the darkness hissed and howled, an anguished sound that echoed into nothingness. A violent shockwave erupted from the point of impact, throwing me backward and forcing me to shield my eyes. I could feel the room shake beneath me, the very foundation trembling like it would split apart. But as I opened my eyes, the darkness began to unwind, twisting away in spirals of smoke, retreating into the corners like shadows at dawn. The room filled with a radiant glow, each stitch of light knitting itself together, illuminating every crack and crevice, shining with the unleashed spirits of those who had suffered. "Keep going," I urged, feeling their presence so strong, growing brighter with each moment. I could sense the connection deep within the shard, more powerful than I had ever imagined. It was a channel, a connection to the energy of all the spirits that resonated through me, pushing me to keep fighting. Yet, just as I thought I had won, a deeper darkness emerged from the void. A cold, overwhelming presence that felt like an abyss, crawling back from the edges of my mind. My heart raced as I realized this was something different, something darker than all that had come before. It towered behind the remnants of the creature, a shape so enormous and powerful that the very air grew stale in its presence. I felt the temperature drop, each breath turning into fog as it loomed closer. The laughter of the lost souls turned into a chorus of terror, filling the air as their bright forms flickered like dying embers. "You think you have one," it boomed, voice ringing with an ancient power that made me tremble. "I am darkness incarnate. I feed on hope, and I thrive in despair." Panic clawed at my heart, and fear wrapped around me like a suffocating blanket. "No, this isn't possible," I stammered, looking for an escape, but the room felt like a prison. I could sense the shadows creeping back, slithering closer, as if waiting for my spirit to waver. Do you honestly believe you can challenge the void? It stepped forward, the weight of its presence pushing me back, shadows undulating like a living nightmare. I could see tendrils writhing around it, each movement promising torment. "I will not surrender," I shouted, forcing each word through trembling lips. Gritting my teeth, I focused on the shard, feeling its warmth pulse through me, calling out to the light. Darkness doesn't own me. A bolt of energy surged from the shard, but the creature only laughed, dark tendrils spiraling toward me, easing closer like snakes. "You think your little shard can save you?" I could hear the memories of the children swirl around me, their voices rising in a rallying cry. They pushed me forward, urging me to believe and fight for them. "We are stronger together," they whispered. Drawing on that strength, I closed my eyes and imagined the light encompassing everything, lighting up every dark corner, illuminating every fear and doubt. I screamed as I thrust the shard into the ground, energy rippling outward like a shockwave. The entire room vibrated with a shattering sound, walls shaking as cracks appeared, light cascading through every fissure. Shadows thrashed, but the light surged on. "You cannot hold back the light," I cried, hoping to pierce the entity's core. It howled in fury, shadows spiraling wildly, twisting and writhing as they tried to drown the light out. But I felt the strength of the lost souls with me, their spirits igniting a fire in my heart. I couldn't let their fight be in vain. Desperation fueled me as I leaped forward, shoving the shard deeper into the darkness. "I claim this place. We will be free." The monster twisted, trying to wrap itself around me, but the light from the shard grew exponentially, expanding like a supernova. The very fabric of the room trembled around me, light breaking through every shadow, forcing the darkness to retreat. As the light blazed brighter, the shriek of the darkness echoed louder, a sound that made me want to cover my ears. But all I could do was watch as the entity began to disintegrate, dissolving into a haze of swirling smoke and flickers of shadow. But just as it seemed the battle was reaching its climax, a more chilling realization settled over me. The remnants of darkness still lingered, scraping along the edges of the room. They flowed back together, coiling and shifting like an angry serpent waiting to strike. I stood my ground, thin tendrils of darkness curling around my ankles, slowly pulling me down into its suffocating grip. Not again, I thought, and I began to fight, trying to pull my legs away from the cold grasp. "Come on," I shouted, pulling strength from the connection of those I had saved, from every lost soul who had fought before me. "I won't let you take me." Drawing on their bravery, I felt the warmth blossom within me again. Light surged in my heart as I lifted the shard high above my head, channeling every ounce of hope and power into it, determined to drive away this final remnant of darkness once and for all. The light spread from me like a shield, the shadows recoiling in agony as the light erupted, illuminating the room in a brilliant blaze. My heart pounded as waves of energy crashed around me, the warmth protecting me as the shadows screeched. I could feel the shadows clawing desperately, but they were crumbling, fading away, their essence dissolving in the brightness. The room shimmered with golden light, washing away the remnants of despair and darkness. The shadows screeched, curling desperately against the onslaught of the light. Each wave resonated, echoing through the empty void, causing them to twitch and crack like glass under pressure. I could feel their cold, dark energy wrapping around me, clawing at my skin like icy fingers trying to pull me back into the abyss. As the shadows thinned, I sensed something lurking just beyond the edges of the light, something darker and more sinister. It felt alive, watching me, waiting for just the right moment to strike back. My heart raced as I squinted into the swirling remnants, half expecting eyes to blink open from the inky depths. "Stay away," I yelled, pressing my back against the wall. "You don't belong here." The words poured out in a mix of anger and fear, cutting through the silence like a knife. But the deeper darkness only seemed to respond by swirling more violently, splitting and melding into grotesque forms that flickered in the shadows. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed, reverberating through the room, making me jump. I looked around, eyes wide, trying to find the source. The walls themselves seemed to pulse and breathe, their surfaces undulating as if they were alive, eager to swallow me whole. I could feel the chill seeping deeper, making it harder to breathe. Each inhale sharp and painful. And then it appeared. Out of the swirling mist, a face began to take shape, twisted and contorted, with hollow eyes and a wide, gaping mouth that opened in a silent scream. It was a face I recognized from my nightmares, a visage that carried with it every fear, every haunting memory that had followed me since childhood. "No!" I gasped, backing away until my back hit the hard surface of the wall, my heart racing in sheer terror. The entity moved closer, its features blurring and reshaping, every form a grotesque reminder of the misery it brought. The mouth opened wider, and suddenly, a chilling voice spilled out, layered with darkness. "You thought you could escape me? You are weak, just like them." It felt like ice washing over me, crawling under my skin. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to block the voice out, but the words crept in like insidious vines. Memories flashed in my mind, faces of the children pleading for help, their eyes wide with fear. My mind raced back to the laughter that once filled the room, now twisted into echoes of despair. "Stop!" I shouted, forcing my eyes open to meet its gaze. "Leave them alone!" As if in response, the figure lunged at me, sweeping out its dark arms, craving my very essence. The light around me flickered in response, dimming as it threatened to swallow me in its shadowy embrace. My breath hitched, panic flaring. "No, not like this!" Desperately clinging to the light, I thrust the shard toward the advancing shadow, channeling every feeling of hope I could muster. A blinding flare erupted, momentarily illuminating the grotesque features of the creature, twisting and writhing in agony. But it wasn't over. The deeper darkness lashed out, and I could feel the force of it striking against the glow. An oppressive weight crashed down upon me, and I staggered, nearly losing my grip on the shard. "You are nothing," it hissed, the voice now cruel and mocking, echoing all around me. "Your light can't save you. Just give in already." I could feel my resolve wavering, doubt creeping into my mind like a poison. The room spun, shadows dancing around me, beckoning me to join their endless spiral. I pressed my hands against my ears, trying to block out the tormenting whispers that filled the air. "You're weak, just like all of them," it continued, dark laughter reverberating, echoing as if coming from a never-ending abyss. "You hear them too, don't you? Their fear is your fear." "No," I thought fiercely. I couldn't let it play with my mind like this. Gathering my breath, I focused again, remembering how those lost souls had fought for freedom. "Light is stronger than fear," I yelled, each word a battle cry as I lanced the shard toward the creature once more. The air sizzled, the light booming around me, like a battle of thunder and fury. The entity howled, darkness shrinking back, but the shadows buzzed around as if ready to retaliate. The creature swirled, forming into dozens of demonic faces, twisting and squirming with malicious glee. Each face came forward, some screaming, others crying, each one a reflection of the pain they had suffered. It was unnerving, the cacophony suffocating me, drowning any sliver of hope. It felt like I was trapped in a nightmare that wouldn't end. "No!" I screamed again, my voice cracking with desperation as the faces reached toward me, their hands clawing through the air like hungry ghosts. "Join us," they whisper. "Ed," an eerie harmony that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. "Submit to the void. You can be one with us." I stumbled backward, feeling a cold sweat break across my forehead. "I won't," I spat, words tumbling out like stones. "You will not take me." My heart raced wildly in my chest as I felt their chill inch closer, trying to seep into my mind, fogging my thoughts. Suddenly, the oppressive weight returned, pinning me as if 1,000 hands gripped my body, constricting around my chest. I gasped for air, looking for any escape, feeling the shadows tugging and pulling at my soul. It felt like a nightmare, and I knew I had to wake up. I closed my eyes tightly, drawing all the light I could into the shard, feeling its heat radiating through me, almost like a pulse. "I am not afraid," I shouted, forcing my eyes open defiantly, grounded in my resolve. "You do not own me." With a burst of courage, I thrust my hands forward, moving deeper into the swirling mass of darkness and shadows, light spilling out from the shard like wildfire. As it hit, the darkness twisted violently, reforming again into the ghastly visage. It seemed to pulsate with rage. "You think a child's fear can end me?" It screamed, and the ground shook beneath me, sending vibrations up my spine. The walls pulsated like living flesh, shadows dancing grotesquely. I felt it lingering, the air around me thickening, tightening, trying to suffocate my will. But I refused to succumb. Drawing on that flicker of light, I pushed forward, feeling every ounce of energy surge through my body. "This ends now," I yelled, pouring everything I had into that shard, pouring it into the dark, summoning every glint of defiance that remained. Bursts of light filled the room, searing through the oppressive shadows, burning like fire against the chill. The wails grew louder, shrill and haunting, a primal scream that echoed down to my very soul. I could hear their desperation, their struggles, and in that moment, I understood. "Fight!" I cried out, not just for myself, but for every soul lost. "You can be free." The room exploded with torrents of brilliant light, radiating outward until the darkness shrank away, shrinking like an overcooked creature under too much heat. But just when I thought I had won, the entity reared back, now morphing into an even more sinister shape, a mass of writhing darkness that coiled in on itself, almost liquid-like. "The light cannot hold me," it hissed, and I felt its words wrap around my thoughts like a tight coil, squeezing the hope I had fought so hard for. I gasped for breath, and the memories of the lost souls began to fade. Panic surged through me as I struggled to maintain my grip on the shard. "No, you won't steal this from me," I shouted, feeling rage pumping through my veins, igniting a fire in my core. Drawing from all that I had, I forced the shard down against the ground, feeling the pulse of light grow stronger, brighter, shattering through the dark tendrils. "I am the light!" I screamed, unleashing everything I had left. The darkness twisted, howled as it tried to contain the onslaught. I felt the force of shadows pushing and pulling, threatening to overwhelm me. But the light surged on, burning brighter than it ever had. Cracks rippled across the surface of the darkness, and I fought through the suffocating weight pressing against me, the cries of the lost souls combining into a chorus of defiance, their bravery pushing through the horror. The pressure of the shadows began to waver, and I saw tiny fissures of light breaking through the dark, expanding, growing. "Yes!" I shouted, feeling the energy pulse through me, the warmth flooding back, pushing the chill away. Just as I thought victory was mine, a tendril whipped out, striking fiercely at my arm, sharp as a blade, cutting through darkness and light alike. I winced, but it only fueled my anger, that burning fire pressing deeper. "No!" I yelled. "You will not take me." The light exploded around me once again, cascading like a waterfall to engulf the shadows in its brilliance. It felt like an endless surge of energy, echoes of laughter and hope filling the air. I pressed my eyes closed, embracing the light, feeling it fill my soul, commanding it to break the dark once and for all. But deep inside, an unsettling thought still lingered. What if this wasn't enough? What if this darkness was something I wouldn't be able to conquer? Suddenly, the room began to shake violently, as if the very foundation was coming apart. I felt the overwhelming clash of light and dark, both hurling against each other, pushing me back as the walls pulsed anew with raw energy. The shadows lashed out, now focusing every dark tendril toward me, trying to break my concentration, seeking to trap me in their suffocating grip. You cannot escape. You will always belong to me. My heart raced as despair threatened to envelop me once more, but deep inside, I felt that flicker of strength still burning. Drawing all my energy into the shard, I leaped forward, plunging it into the dark with all my remaining willpower. Yes, this is not the end, I shouted. The brilliance grew like 1,000 stars bursting forth, blinding me in the light. Shadows shrieked and recoiled, melting away like ice in the morning sun. Freedom, I gasped, feeling the warmth wash over my body like a tide, the darkness thinning as the light chased it beyond the edges, further and further away. But even as I felt the brightness engulf me, a sense of dread settled in the pit of my stomach. The shadows were retreating, but I knew deep down that they would not vanish forever. What if they bided their time, waiting for me to falter, for my strength to wane? I took a deep, trembling breath, feeling the last remnants of darkness slip away. But now, as silence reigned in the aftermath, I couldn't shake the feeling that my battle was far from over. The darkness would return, and my fight had just begun. An unsettling stillness settled over the room, as if the air itself was holding its breath. I could feel the aftermath of the battle thrum around me, every surface glistening with remnants of the light. But as I took a moment to gather myself, the creeping shadow of dread washed back over me, more palpable than it had been moments before. I glanced around, feeling the weight of silence pressing down like a heavy fog. The walls, stripped of their dark menace, still felt off, like they were breathing a little too fast, still alive but not quite like before. My pulse quickened as I felt the chill return, creeping up my spine. It was as if the very shadows that had been banished were now lurking just beyond the edges of my vision, waiting, plotting to return. Then, from the corner of my eye, I saw movement. It flickered and danced at the edges of the light, shadows curling and twisting like smoke, trying to find a way back. My heart raced as I turned to face it, but there was nothing there. Just a lingering sense of foreboding that made my skin crawl. The breath seemed to catch in my throat as I thought of what could be hiding, built on the remnants of the darkness that had tried to consume me. Not again, I whispered to myself, feeling the panic bubble in my chest. I could hear the faint whisper of voices from that earlier confrontation, murmuring from the shadows, calling my name in a soft, haunting melody. Come play, join us. It was sweet yet horrific, a tempting sing-song that sent shivers down my spine. I took a deep breath, trying to shake off their lure. Leave me alone, I shouted into the quiet, but my words echoed back softly, as if the room itself was mocking my courage. It was then that I noticed a shape looming near the far wall, a darker patch against the almost luminous surfaces surrounding it. I squinted, heart hammering wildly in my chest, feeling an inescapable pull toward it. The figure stepped forward, and my blood ran cold as I saw it more clearly. It was a shadow, but not like any before. It had form, a face that was disturbingly familiar, twisting in the semblance of someone I knew, someone I lost. Its features were warped, a horrifying mimicry of life that sent dread spiraling through me. Don't you want to join me? It crooned, voice dripping with sinister charm, holding out a hand that flickered like dying embers. I felt my heart beat louder, thrumming in my ears. The urge to step forward was almost unbearable as it beckoned me closer, like a moth to a flame. The affection I once had twisted into something grotesque and unsettling. Stop it, I shouted, shaking my head as if that could dislodge the feeling trying to creep in. But the shadow only grinned wider, a mouth that seemed to stretch impossibly far, revealing rows of jagged teeth that glistened in the light. This is where you belong. Come back. You can't escape your fate. I took a step back, fighting the urge to turn and run. The room shifted, shadows stretching and distorting wildly, a blur of darkness blending with the brilliance of the flickering light. I I felt like I was caught in the middle of a storm, a cyclone of light and shadow tearing at my sanity. The laughter echoed, filling my mind with echoes of despair that almost drew me in, tugging at my own fears, each lingering doubt threatening to pull me under. In that moment, I realized the truth. The darkness wouldn't just disappear. It was woven into the very fabric of my being. The fight was never truly over. The entity had been banished, but it had left behind a poisonous seed. Doubt, despair, the fear of what could return. "Get out of my head!" I screamed, clutching the shard tightly, feeling its warmth resonate with every heartbeat as I fought against the insistent whispers. Through sheer will, I drove the shard into the ground, letting the light surge once again. "I will not let you take me." The shadow flinched, recoiling as the light exploded around me. But as it surged forth, the figure morphed and twisted into dozens of faces, each one a nightmarish reflection of my past. Every fear, every regret, all materialized around me, each voice clamoring and combining into a cacophony of anguish. "You are weak. You can't escape," they screamed together. I thrashed, trying to break free from their grasp, trying to drown out their haunting chorus. "No, I am stronger than these memories," I roared, pulling every ounce of strength from within, but their voices were relentless, hurling my failures at me, echoing off the walls as if they were trapped, waiting for me to join them in their eternal torment. Just when it seemed I would succumb, the shard pulsed in my grip, warm and glowing brighter than the sun. I closed my eyes again, vision blurring as I felt the energy flow through me, summoning the last reserve of courage buried deep within. I will not be a part of this. The light intensified, overpowering the shadows, the darkness screeching and twisting as it tried to wrest control back. But I held firm, letting the warmth spread, and with one final push, I released it again. "You are nothing," I shouted. The air crackled, the light erupting like 1,000 stars exploding in the night sky. I could feel the very foundations of the room tremble, shadows dwindling away into nothingness. Their cries turned to wails echoing in an endless void. It enveloped me in a cocoon of warmth, glowing, absorbing everything I feared. Yet, just as the darkness fell away, a cold realization washed over me. I knew that shadows never truly disappear. They lay in wait, biding time. Deep in my heart, I felt that my battle with the darkness wasn't just about defeating it. It was a war fought daily within myself. As the last remnants of the shadows crumbled to dust, I looked around the now peaceful room. A hush fell over everything, a stillness that felt almost surreal. I had triumphed, at least for now, but the unsettling silence served as a reminder that darkness would always be a part of me, creeping at the edges of my mind, waiting to test my resolve. Will I ever escape? I thought as I steadied myself, pulling together the pieces of my shattered confidence. I took a long, calming breath, feeling the warmth of the light ebbing softly around me. Instead of fear, I felt determination rising, a flicker of hope igniting once more. And so, as I stood there amidst the remnants of what had been a fierce battle, I made an unspoken promise to myself. I would carry the light, embrace it fiercely. I would prepare for whatever wandered back from the void, for I knew I would face it again. Using the experiences of my past, I would grow stronger and braver, ready to confront whatever demons dared to rise again. Even in the creeping shadows, I would remain lit from within, a beacon defying the depths of darkness.